whilst the body's burning, as the war machine keeps turning. Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds.
Welcome back to the Benjy and Cal Podcast. Here we are with another special episode. This is our first time doing a part 2 because we were talking about war and we knew that we just couldn't get enough war. So,
war it keeps going. It never ends.
Comes back around.
You think one round is over, boom, another one hits you in the face.
Exactly. Yeah, the whole idea, world peace, it's a far off prospect.
Mm-hmm. And that was Jack Black, by the way, singing War Pigs in memory of Ozzy Osborne. May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace.
Along with the bats that he ate or bit their heads off.
Mm. Did you listen to a lot of Ozzy Osborne, Benjy?
Mostly just the Black Sabbath album that came out, Paranoid, or that whole album. Just very intense, the pioneers of heavy metal. They really brought a whole new genre in. Really, yeah.
Cool.
Good band, good album. Recommended to the listeners.
Nice. Not my thing, but many people's things. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Different people have different tastes, and we should kill each other over it.
All right, cool. So we're going to be talking about war again. Should we just jump right into? We have an outline here, and we stopped somewhere in the middle. Where do we stop again? Remind me.
Well, last time we spoke about the history of war. How did it all start? What does it look like? We talked about, how our wars resolved at the end, and we got into like a very interesting area of the ethics of warfare.
Yeah.
And nothing was truly resolved, probably because I don't know if we're ever going to come to some true resolution, but there's just at least a lot more to be hashed out there, I think we felt.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a really challenging thing because I think there's something really intrinsic in each person as part of their tribe that they don't want to go against the narrative of their tribe. And even, maybe your tribe's in the right, the other tribe is, in the wrong, which is entirely possible. It could be that, you are doing the right thing, but just the idea that you could be the bad guy, it's a very unsettling thing. There's just going to be a mental block there either way.
Yeah.
And it just requires either a lot of honest self-reflection, which no one really has any room for. And it also, that's what we strive to do, as always, especially I think on this podcast, we're always trying to like delve deeper, get to the bottom of the issue. But also a big problem is if I'm going to like say, okay, I'm ready to lay down my weapons, that's contingent on the other side being able to as well. And as we got into the last time, we talked about the tit for tat warfare. It only works if the other side is willing to put down their weapons as well. So, like, I'm conflating weapons with, morality of the war, but I guess I'm more talking about a justification of war. So, like, the justification of war is a tool of war. It's not just guns. It's also pushing your narrative, and it's something that I started watching. Maybe I'm going a bit on a tangent here, but I'll bring it back, I think, to where I'm going for.
Take your time.
Yeah. So there's the concept of lines on maps, where you think intuitively war is about the lines on the maps. Where are we going to draw your border and my border, where the shared border? I want to draw it here. You want to draw it there, closer in my territory. What's yours? What's mine? That's it. But there's a more, I don't want to say, a more abstract lines on maps where it's my narrative versus your narrative. And we're kind of both fighting to push this narrative further and your narrative back. My narrative further, your narrative back, and you the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And agreements and to conflict are often either, if it's not a complete surrender, it's often, where is that line going to be drawn in that abstract notion of my narrative versus your narrative? I mean, if it's complete surrender, then my narrative has completely taken over yours.
Mm-hmm.
If we come to some ceasefire agreement, then the narratives, meet in the middle somewhere, or not even a formal agreement, not just a ceasefire agreement. If we come to a formal agreement, then we actually solidified those narration borderlines. And so I'm trying to push, this is, I'm right to do this. It's self-defense. You pose a threat to me, blah, blah. Maybe you're trying to say the same thing, and we're pushing back against each other. And this is an essential tool of warfare because, at least nowadays, in the past, it used to just be, might is right. But now the public conscious, because sanctions are part of war now, and the public conscience of which narrative is correct, the narrative itself and how you wage that is part of the war. It could be seen as propaganda by some, but it's inarguably, in essence, an essential part of the war. And why did I bring that up? Well, like I said, the idea of challenging one's own narrative, one's tribe's narrative, that would be, in essence, allowing the enemy. You'd have to be open to the enemy's narrative and listening to them, and you'd be, in essence, surrendering, or if you completely take their narrative. But if you're willing to meet somewhere in the middle, that's contingent on them also accepting your narrative in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So the self introspection is dependent on the other's introspection as well. So that was my point, just about why it's sometimes tough to talk about who's right in a war, and we'll get more into specific examples. But yeah, maybe you had some thoughts or.
I'm trying to process what you just said, because I also was thinking that it's very tough to argue about who was right in given wars, which is why I do find it's going to be a very interesting topic to explore. But I know that I had to prepare a bit for this particular podcast because I was aware of the particular conflicts that we were planning on talking about, and I was trying to kind of figure out, okay, but not just how do I argue, how do I genuinely explore who was right? Not just exactly like you said, not just trying to argue for my side, for the side that my tribe is a part of, but to kind of see it objectively, or see it. I don't think it's correct to try to see it necessarily from the other perspective. I think you have to consider the other perspective as part of your consideration for what is really true. You have to at least consider that the other side has a point, and that the other side are perhaps even fundamentally oriented towards the good as much as you are, if not more, and their perspective, given their situation, is a offshoot of that. Yeah, that was my mindset entering into this podcast. I don't think I can more specifically respond to what you just said at this particular time.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, maybe if we get into specific examples of wars,
yeah,
it'll become maybe a little more clear.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so I have here just 6 wars chosen at random, where they're just, I guess, big, at least in the Western world.
Mm-hmm. Certainly significant to us,
yeah,
as American Canadians who now live in Israel, right? American Canadian Israelis.
Or Israeli.
Yeah, of course.
But I meant more as like Westerners.
Okay. Yeah, very well. As Westerners, whatever you want to call us.
Right. Which we'll talk about self-identity as well.
Okay.
So, starting with Roman expansionism.
Oh man, the hardest one we started with.
Well, I'm just going, chronologically.
Okay, fine, chronologically. All right, Roman expansionism. I don't really know much about it, and all of my prep time was dedicated to the other ones. Give me just the basics, or maybe we can pull up the basics so that we can have something to work with.
Well, okay, so we kind of touched upon it last time a lot, and it was more about, there were a whole bunch of tribes, let's say Germanic tribes. There were tribes in ancient Israel, a whole bunch of tribes without any specific unity.
Okay.
And the Roman Empire came along, and with their newfound strategies of warfare, being able to really move large supply chains across and really collaborate across all sorts of borders and territory, they were able to conquer all of these smaller tribes. And we spoke about how like this was sort of a good thing. I mean, a lot of this opinion comes from Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote *Sapiens*, which it's a classic book that a lot of people have read, where he brings a lot of these types of arguments about like what's necessarily good for humanity isn't always seen as good for humans at the time.
Uh-huh.
So becoming a unified empire was good for humanity in the long run. It stopped us from, small local wars. It unified us through language, through what have the Romans ever done for us? The roads,
Right. I would assume it brought a lot of that Roman technology, if they were so advanced, more advanced compared to their neighbors. I would assume it brought that technology to a lot of people who wouldn't have been exposed to it.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it came with, slavery, oppression, taxes.
And also just imperialism.
Imperialism.
A foreign power deciding that they now are in control of you.
Right. So the question, I guess, really is, was there any way of doing it of unifying everyone through non-violent means? So, for instance, in the Middle East, there's still this issue a lot where there's a lot of these small tribal, areas full of specific, one sect of some religion. And everyone always says, okay, yeah, everything, the British and French screwed up everything by creating these arbitrary lines during their treaty after World War I, where they defeated the Ottoman Empire. And they just sliced up the Middle East along arbitrary lines, however they saw fit. And these lines served as a basis for war for the next, until today. So it's called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And, that's, for example, how they carved up Syria and Lebanon has really stayed until today. But if you look at a map of the different sects within Lebanon and Syria, it's a whole bunch of different religions that have a history of warring with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Syria itself is a huge mess. I've basically heard it referred to as like Game of Thrones there, because no one's necessarily in the right. No one has like a true moral cause, and no one has really a unified backing that everyone wants to go behind. So they don't want to fight, but at the same time, they don't want to be unified. So
when was the Sykes-Picot Agreement?
That was after, I think, 1917. It was after World War
War I.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, everything which was the Ottoman Empire was now split between Egypt and between England and France.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the true question is, and what some people have like suggested to Syria, for example. In Syria right now, Assad, the dictator, was toppled by a group, Al-Julani, or Al-Shara, as he's now called, an ex-Al Qaeda leader, um, who is the leader of Sunni Muslim groups, and there are all sorts of different groups, all fighting to take down Assad. So they were unified in their opposition of Assad. He took over, and because everyone wanted the war to be over, they were hoping, that okay, we should unite under him. Foreign powers, internal powers as well, but still, he had to consolidate power, and that, in his mind, requires attacking all of these holdout, let's say, tribes or military groups
Mm-hmm.
that want to still maintain weapons to defend themselves, as they say. And he wants to consolidate power, so you can't have these other military groups. Just like, I don't know, for example, in America, you could have mercenary groups, but it wouldn't be allowed to have a non-sanctioned, non-government sanctioned military group.
Mm-hmm.
You need to consolidate power. So the question is, can you consolidate power without violence? Something that was brought up was a federation. A federation is where you have separate groups that kind of rule themselves, have autonomy within a country, but they're still unified. They still recognize some like overall government. And what that hopes to solve is that it has unity without having internal strife. So the question is, could we have ever unified as individual tribes under like a federation, or is that just never going to happen? And violence was the only means. Or is living as a million separate tribes better than what we have nowadays?
So, okay. My sense is no, it would not be possible for maybe it'll be possible someday. We kind of spoke last week or last episode about the tendency of world history to proceed towards peace. So it's possible that at some point in the future we are gradually getting to a place of unity, of peace and unity, where there is kind of this world benign government that governs all of us. Looking back in the past, however, I don't think I see any time in the past where it seems that that could have happened peacefully. Not on a large scale, I would say. Do I think the Roman Empire could have spread peacefully? My guess would be no, based on that reasoning.
Right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Nowadays, things are possible. Large scale cooperation is possible. You could say, Europe, the EU, NATO might be at a different, or you have these world trade agreements that are composed of a lot of different countries that's supposed to mutually serve all of them without, or the UN, you could argue, without having to take over by violent means. You have cooperation and unity through hopefully prosperity, through dialogue, through diplomacy. But that requires a lot of ability to communicate, which only comes with technology, ability to send messages, discuss, translate. Just not feasible 1,000 years ago. It also requires education, or I guess 2,000 years ago for the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Requires education. I don't think you could like convince. Well, they did have trade between tribes on a very small scale. But
yeah.
could you? Yeah.
Even using the word tribes to describe like everybody 2,000 years ago is probably not accurate. I mean, you had before the Roman Empire, you had the Macedonian Empire, and you had the
Byzantine. Well, that came after. You had the Babylonian Empire.
Yeah.
Before you had the Assyrian Empire.
You had the early Israelite Empire,
or the Egyptian.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not that there weren't empires, but in Germany there were not empires, I think, at the time.
Okay.
So I'm talking about areas in Europe, for example, that were still tribal.
Mm-hmm.
But even even in the Roman Empire, there were still plenty of like holdout tribes. Like the Israelites still did. I guess they're mostly conquered, but even in these empires, you still had different small sects that were either respected or like allowed to exist as long as they don't take too much control or power. So, I mean, like, what would it have looked like? It would have looked like maybe some Roman soldiers going into a village, hoping that the villagers didn't see this as an immediate threat and start attacking them, and then them sitting down with the village chief and the the tribal chief and saying, "Hey, we want to, I guess, trade things with you. We want to build roads here."
Yeah, it would depend exactly what the Romans wanted from that negotiation. I would assume they wanted some things that really they could only obtain through war, at least to some extent, depending on who they were getting it from. But yeah, if they were willing to compromise more and come in with more diplomacy, then I would assume it would be possible to spread their influence in a peaceful way, as long as they were happy with what that would achieve, as opposed to the things they might be able to achieve by just conquering the place.
hmm And so I guess I guess my final say on it would be, was it morally correct? No, they should have tried to do it in a peaceful means and spread their influence. Would that have been as successful? Probably not.
hmm
And so, are we happy that they did nowadays, at least? Yeah.
So why exactly are we so happy nowadays that the Roman Empire was as expansive as it was?
Well, if you have a lot of, if you have unity, then you have, all these technologies can be developed. You have, if you have a small group of people, then you can't just say, okay, these guys are going to work on on research and technology and play with their math textbooks all day and doodle and write stuff. It's each person has to have a more immediate contribution. But when you have large scale communities at work, then all of a sudden things such as universities, can take off because you have the resources, you have the manpower, and you have the large trade routes. You have more prosperity in theory, as long it's proportional to the amount of corruption. But in theory, the emperor can um, elevate, certain scientists, physicians to develop things on a large scale that will help the world. That's just not feasible in small scale tribal areas. And yeah, I mean, if we all lived in our own tribal communities, maybe like we'd be happier from like an evolutionary standpoint if your goals in life are just to relax and hunt and um,
Less successful, but more happy, perhaps.
yeah, like successful from a large scale technological point of view.
hmm
What Yuval Noah Harari argues a lot about is, you have these revolutions, such as the agricultural revolution, that had ultimately it was better for everyone because nowadays farming is great. We have so much more food to support everyone, and you and I don't have to be working in the fields all day and harvesting plants. We could just go to the store.
Yeah.
At the same time, it opened us up more um, to wars where you could just burn down all the crops and everyone would starve, or you could have famine from locusts and disease. So it was better in some ways, and ultimately better for the more successful system for humanity, but it opened us up to a lot of not great things as well.
Well, if you're bringing up specifically the vulnerability of an enemy being able to burn your food sources, and then the population can no longer knows how to sustain itself. But did that happen a lot? I don't know of an example where that happened, and even if it happened in some instances, it didn't happen enough to stop the continued use of technology to make our lives, more comfortable.
Right. Well, just off the top of my head, during the Communist Revolution in China, um, there was actually one of the, I think that is the largest death toll out of any specific event in humanity's history,
Mm.
where they believed for some reason that the birds, because the birds would like eat seeds of the wheat and stuff, so they believed that the wheat was that the birds were killing the crops. So they went on this this whole crusade against the birds, and like a propaganda crusade to take. You should uh, attack any birds, kill them that you see, the sparrows. Turned out that they were um, actually eating the bugs, and it was the bugs that were eating all the crops. So then after that, a famine ensued in which like uh, 80 million people died or something.
Oh wow.
So yeah, but it's not just about vulnerability. I mean, it's also the type of lifestyle changed drastically. Like it used to be that you could just, tribes would wander from place to place when, okay, now they know that the berries are in season in this area, so they'll just go over there and there would be berries, presumably. Um, but and they could spend their days not farming necessarily. And then the agricultural revolution came around, and it was dependent on being able to trade all of your crop for someone else's crop. And if your crop isn't successful, then you're screwed. And you have to have lots of kids because these kids need to be able to help you in the field. And
Well, hold on. First, actually, I want to go back to the communist cultural revolution in China, and using that as an example of the technology of making agriculture more automated and making the populace less knowledgeable and less skillful in agriculture. Using this as an example to show that this caused issues for humanity. Now, in a way, of course, I see the connection, but I would more likely point to that as an example of the problems with a tyrannical government or a government that doesn't have the best interests of its people in mind, or that makes poor decisions due to its
inability to have free thinkers like scientists
Yeah.
tell you any different.
Right, and less a problem with the advancement of technology.
Right. So this might be something that we discuss later, which is tendency for corruption in like inevitable? Is this part of humanity that could and probably will happen? Is that enough to determine policies, or should policies be determined according to principle? Which is, yeah, in principle, agricultural was good because ideally you wouldn't have any issues with it, and there's if everyone is able to do it with the proper education, then it is the better system for humanity and creates more prosperity. But are these vulnerabilities inevitable, and that's why maybe it's not such a good thing?
Mm-hmm. Wait, so say it again. The two options. One is make policy by principle, and the other is what?
Policy according to tendencies of human nature.
Interesting.
So,
I feel like it's both. I would need to get more concrete.
Like another example would be possibly capitalism versus communism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something as well we can get into because that was a whole basis for many wars, especially throughout the last century.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, yeah, it's kind of an underlying common political struggle or conflict. And, the classical argument is communism sounds good in theory and should make us happier in theory, but in practice, people aren't going to pull their weight. They're going to corrupt the system and take control of power. Capitalism is, it kind of leaves a lot of people behind. In theory, pure capitalism could lead to, um, you know, a small group of people being in power while the rest kind of slave away due to the forces of capitalist market. And so what you wind up probably with is, like you said, a balance between the two is probably ideal, where you have a capitalist system with some socialist um, principles to make sure that your poor and vulnerable people are taken care of, so that they don't you don't want the inequality to get too bad, so that they don't rise up against you. Um, but we could get more into that now. I guess we could talk about who was right during the Cold War.
Is that then going to? I did not come prepared for a capitalism versus communism discussion. But wait, so to take it back for a second. So communism would be the in principle, meaning when you say there's the difference between principle versus like what human nature leads to. Maybe it's
Well, I think it's both. I think in principle, well, I think if pure communism and pure capitalism, no, it is a little confusing. I hear what you're saying.
Well, it seemed clear in my head, at least for a moment there, that communism is, at least in the way you were framing it, is the kind of ideal, the kind of like, well, in principle we should be communists, but pragmatically we should be capitalists.
I mean, that's the classical argument, I think.
Okay.
The reason being that it just seems like a communist paradise would exist, whereas like a capitalist paradise, it's hard to imagine what such a thing would look like.
You got to read Ayn Rand.
You got to read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, and she'll show you well, I don't know if we want to spoil anything.
Wait, did you read Atlas Shrugged?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, very good.
It's recommended. It's, essential reading for many philosophical debates and discussions. But yeah, she has there's a perfect paradise where anyone could do whatever they if they have an idea, then they all of a sudden can say, hey, I'm going to build this free market. Boom, I could do it for 1 cent cheaper than you, so I'm going to take your market share. So the problem, and so then your worth and your value is directly proportional to how much value you bring in terms of market value. And yeah, I guess however you extend that to other people. But like, okay, it's just harder they're both hard concepts in theory, but there are certain vulnerabilities that capitalism can fall to. There's no pure free market. It always winds up devolving into monopolies, and you don't wind up with someone actually being able to take someone else's market share. You have no chance against Amazon, let's say, even if you have a service that sells everything for cheaper, simply because they will buy you out. They'll push. Well, okay, buying you out is probably fine, but you won't be able to advertise. You won't be able to get into the public mind, and actually, like a pure free market would be, some internet page that says, hey, everyone, look, they are now above Amazon. It's, the information that's required for a pure free market system can just like never really exist.
So I kind of hear that. I think it's a mistake when proponents of the free market try to use utopia-like language to support the free market. It could be that Ayn Rand is guilty of that. I didn't actually read Atlas Shrugged.
What?
To be clear here.
Wow. Okay.
You
just knew that she discusses it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm familiar with Ayn Rand. Like, in somewhat at least. Like, in case anyone listening thinks that I said we should, Benjy should read Atlas Shrugged. I haven't read it myself. I said you should read Ayn Rand, and Benjy brought up Atlas Shrugged. I just want to clarify that.
They're all the Fountainhead. Apparently, I haven't read it, but apparently it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I did see the Fountainhead movie.
Okay.
Which, yeah, no, it was good. I enjoyed it. And Atlas Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged, they made into a bunch of movies. I don't know if they finished it. I saw part 1.
Yeah, I imagine that the message doesn't come across quite as clear, unless you're reading like 600 pages of her just like trying to get her message into your head.
Mm-hmm. It's possible.
versus like a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, I think it's more like 1,000 pages, but
Yeah.
So anyway, I do think it's a mistake to use kind of utopia language when describing the free market. The free market to me is it's not. You should never really think that it's perfect, or this idea of like a perfect free market where there's complete openness of information, transparency. Everyone's aware of exactly how valuable Amazon's product is versus how valuable somebody else's product is. So everyone can always make the optimal decisions, and that drives productivity. And people are always trying to make the best product for everybody. That doesn't really happen exactly like that. The point of the free market, I think, is that it's a system that works with the way the world naturally works. It doesn't try to override reality. It kind of works with reality. And reality is that people are competitive and selfish. And so the free market is it's the civilized selfishness of it's a society of selfish people getting along in a civilized manner that looks like the free market. Everything else,
like a formal manner.
Yeah. Sorry, wait, no, I didn't.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just nitpicking or something. But just like civilized, you're saying there's nature, and then there's like the civilized version of nature. But it could be like still, dog eat dog kind of world. I don't know I just don't know if I'd call that civilized, for example. I guess so. It's like without violence, sort of.
But exactly. Competition through commerce is clearly much more civilized than competition through
But this
aggression.
is slavery would probably be in line with the pure capitalist theory.
Well, it's important to like I'm trying to digest.
I mean, I'm saying a toned down version of that, but that requires government oversight. But I still hear what you're saying, that it's more in line. Yeah, it's a more civilized version if we assume that it's civilized. And
it could be that you're imagining something that I never was alluding to. I'm not sure what we mean by the pure capitalist theory, and I certainly don't mean anarchy when I talk about capitalism or the free market.
Well, maybe we forgot we committed the cardinal sin of the Benjy podcast.
We didn't start not defining what we're talking about. Well, that is part of the problem. We're deep into capitalism and communism right now. I do feel we haven't started from a place of optimal constructiveness here, because it's not really about when purely just talking about them in economic terms as economic ideas. I don't find that is the best way to talk about it. Because, well, first of all, yes, it is true that any free market must be embedded in a stable society with a stable government, and very much, and hopefully with a rich culture, a strong culture, that a strong social fabric. That's what I'm trying to say. Hopefully there's a strong social fabric at the heart of the society, and a free market is a very healthy thing to be embedded in such a society. If we're just focusing on capitalism, so-called pure capitalism, without any strong social fabric, without any religion or good values in the culture, or without a stable government at the head of it, it's not something that I believe in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but I mean, I guess I would argue that this government and these social, this social fabric, this socialism, this maintenance of maintaining equal rights is a low-level form of communism, because it's the government stepping in, intervening, and saying that each person is guaranteed these basic things.
Well, I'm not going to quibble over how you frame it. If that's the way you want to frame it, you can frame it that way. So but then I think we're in a false dichotomy here. Capitalism versus communism. There's so much more going on in the world than just whether you get what you earn or whether you are due certain things. But even when we're talking about rights, I don't even view rights really that way. I mean, rights are at the heart of human rights are at the heart of capitalism as well. It's because you're an individual with a conscience and with at least a certain concept of free will that must undergird a capitalist society. It's because of those things that you are due the respect of being allowed to work for yourself and make a living, and if you come up with a great idea and sell it to other people, then that's you did that, and that's your work, and it's not for the government to take that away from you.
If you didn't come up with a great idea and turn it into market value, then why, under a pure capitalist system, or even just according to the theory of capitalism, why do you have any value? I don't see why just having a conscience would mean that you have value if no one's willing to pay for that.
Well, that's why I don't believe at all in this pure capitalism theory that we seem to be talking about.
But why? Okay, so your idea of capitalism necessitates people with good moral behavior.
Absolutely, it's far more important for society to have good moral values.
But that's not intrinsic within capitalism. As far as my definition of capitalism is, it doesn't necessitate that. It just says the value that someone brings should be transparent and should not be interfered with by the government. And that value will win out over other value provided by other people, because people are willing to pay more or pay for that over something else's value. It says nothing about consciousness. It's just like not part of the same. It says nothing about morality. It's just not part of the same
consciousness,
world.
Conscience.
Yeah.
But wait, I didn't quite follow. Can you explain the value of capitalism again from your perspective?
Or like the idea of capitalism.
Share the idea, yeah.
It's that each entity, there are entities. These could be corporations, people.
Okay.
But they have the complete right to determine whatever they want, pay their pay the people that work for them however much they want. They could pay them $1, they could pay them minimum wage, whatever it is, doesn't matter. They could pay themselves billions of dollars. All that matters is the true value of $1 is determined by what someone is willing to pay for it. Nothing to do with human rights necessarily, nothing to do with environmental factors. If someone wants to purchase another person, then why not? I mean, how do you get ownership over the person in the first place? But then what is ownership? Capitalism would say if you can control it, if you could defend it, then it's yours. There's nothing, it doesn't matter necessarily what it is. If you want to create an oil factory that pollutes the whole world, it doesn't matter. You could do that if someone's willing to pay you for your oil. There's no oversight or environmental considerations.
We're talking about something that I have no interest in defending. This isn't at all what I believe.
Well, I'm not saying that that if you like capitalism or you're a proponent of capitalism, that this is necessarily what you believe. I'm just saying the world of morality and the world of capitalism are just separate. I agree. They work better when they are together, but it's just apples and oranges.
That I don't agree with. I want to get away from this idea of pure capitalism. It's not even a thing that I ever think about, and it's not something that I believe in. This pure capitalism of like, if you want to own somebody, you can own somebody as long as you're willing to pay for them or something like that.
Or if you could, claim ownership and defend it.
Yeah. So I want to get away from that, and just point out that assuming a strong social fabric with a culture of proper moral values and a stable government, there are the reason why a society requires a free market, not free to the point where there's anarchy, where there aren't rules, but free that in a way that allows people to choose, to explore, to that just as long as there isn't some greater need that needs to be addressed, gets out of people's business. There's tremendous moral reasons for that, and it's really a moral argument more than anything. In fact, the economic benefit of it is this bonus that is a bonus that I think exists because there is ultimately a congruence between different ways of looking at the world. There's a kind of fundamental truth, goodness to free markets and to freedom in general, and those things collide from a moral perspective and from an economic perspective. But the main argument comes from a moral perspective, right? The reason why Jack Phillips, Jack Phillips, if no one knows who that is, that's totally fair. He's the guy who owned a cake shop in Colorado, Christian man, who there was a gay couple who came in and asked him to make a cake for their wedding, and he didn't want to, and then they sued him, and originally they won in Colorado, but he eventually got it all the way to the Supreme Court, and he eventually won by the Supreme Court. Anyway, the reason why Jack Phillips has every right to make whatever cake he pleases is not from some economic reason, like, oh, the economy works better when we allow Christian bakers to choose what cakes they make. It's completely a moral argument. The economic bonus of the free market is a bonus.
Okay, so I still maintain the position that you're a bit, I think, steel manning.
Wait, steel manning or straw manning?
Well, just for our viewers, straw manning is when you make someone else's argument easier to attack, and steel manning is when you make your own argument stronger to defend.
Okay, yeah.
So I still think that, like, I don't know, it just sounds like you're taking the best of both worlds. And you're like saying, oh, capitalism isn't anarchy. It's actually like, it's a moral thing. But I mean, like, I'm not saying it's anarchy. I think there are rules of capitalism that would have to be followed, and it could be, like, civil, not civil. It could. These rules, are hard to uphold even in a pure capitalist society. And, like, I don't necessarily see slavery as anarchy. I think it's something else. I think it's just immoral, but I don't see it as anarchy. I think there's a difference.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And the other thing I was going to say is that if you're going to apply these rules and say, oh, capitalism, when I think of capitalism, it works hand in hand like it's supposed to. You assume a good social fabric, people with good conscience, and so forth. But then you have to also apply that to communism, and then you'd have to say, okay, I don't care about the fact that it corrupts. I'm assuming these are good people who are going to make sure that they understand the consequences of their power of being in charge, and that they have to say, okay, we're not going to corrupt. And I'm going to assume that people are, still going to want to take their, take control of their destiny and want to, give and be a part of their society. And they're not just going to do nothing all day because there's no incentive. So I'm just saying, if you're going to start applying these moral considerations to the definition of capitalism, then you also have to for communism. And then all of a sudden, communism looks a little better as well.
Two things. So it's not about defending. It's not about saying. It's not as if my main objective here is to defend capitalism, and I'm using an assumption of goodness on the part of the society in general to defend how capitalism would work. Really, what I'm saying is that the goodness in the society is the most important thing. Whatever economic policy you want to have, it means nothing if there's no good social fabric, if there's no cohesion, shared values that are congruent with what is true and good. So that's really the most important thing. And I think a part of having a good moral foundation in your society is respecting individual freedom, which inevitably means a certain degree of free market. But about communism,
Which we should also probably define. We defined capitalism. We didn't define communism.
Okay, very well.
So, in general, I guess it would be everyone earns the same amount of money. They own the same thing. So everyone would own one house, one car, I guess, or
Yeah.
it would all be controlled by some central bureau that would ensure that that the country or the bureau would be in charge and ultimately own everything and be responsible for allocating it to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to start a company, there'd be like no real incentive to do that because you wouldn't own any more of that.
Yeah.
And so you'd also, everyone would work each according to his capacity.
Oh, straight from Karl
Karl
Marx.
Marx himself.
Yeah.
What was the full line?
I don't know.
Okay. Each according to his ability, according to. So, if you couldn't do physical labor, then, they would find you a job somewhere else
Mm-hmm.
and you would just have to do it because you can't just not work. And then the problem traditionally with capitalism is, okay, you'd have the people at the top who say, hey, I have like ultimate power. And, in order to stop anyone from rising up to take me out, I guess, because they have their own incentives to take control, which might also be a problem with capitalism. I don't know, but like the reason power corrupts
Mm-hmm.
is because you have these people. Someone has to be in the leadership position.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, and then they wind up, I don't know, having all this power without any oversight necessarily from anything else. There's only one party allowed to function. Otherwise, it starts becoming competitive, and competition is the essence of capitalism. And whoever has the better policy will get to be in charge. But you
Mhm.
can't have that in order to maintain a communist approach.
Yeah. From the get-go, in order to implement communism, you need a much bigger central authority with a lot more power to distribute all the goods equally. As soon as you have that, you have a much more significant problem in communism of too much centralized power that corrupts whoever's in charge than you do with capitalism. In addition, in order to maintain the needed power in the central authority to implement communism, inevitably the central authority will be against all other things that make the society strong, such as religion, such as even any other values or anything that the society believes that they believe is bigger or greater than the central authority. The central authority will resist and do things to squash. And so inevitably the central authority, in order to maintain its power, will act against the interests of the society.
Okay, but what about capitalism? You have entities that become more powerful because their company is able to provide some very valuable service.
Yeah.
So then they become powerful. Why can we also assume that their power will corrupt them, that they will do anything to hold on to their power and to maintain the free market principles that got it there in the first place? So the same way that communism defends itself, capitalism will also defend itself. And I'll just throw in there, even though I know you discussed it, that I don't think Ayn Rand cared at all about religion or anything else.
It's possible she was. I don't remember. Was she completely secular?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think she also viewed religion as an enemy of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not saying she was perfect.
No, I know. But just in terms of capitalism, yeah, I know that you said that you don't want to discuss capitalism as a pure thing, rather the good capitalism.
We're already so far. We're discussing this episode is about capitalism versus communism.
Right. Okay. We could get back on track. But
yeah, you can finish your point. That's fine.
Okay. Well, we could ask. Okay, now that we know what the two warring entities of the past century have been about, the ideologies that they were fighting over, because it wasn't as much two tribes fighting over a specific parcel of land. It was like the first I think the first really globalized conflict. I don't know. I would say World War II and World War One were more based in like.
Wait, sorry, Benji. There was something that came up just a
Yeah.
few sentences ago that I just had to respond to,
Okay.
which I'm sure we could go back and forth on this for a long time, and so you're right that we should move on. But I just want to address the idea that a corporation that grows very big and makes a lot of money in a capitalist society is at all equivalent to the government itself, the authority of the society itself that has control of the military, of the police, and even of the legal system itself and the justice system. That those two are at all equivalent. It's true that corporations can become very big, but we've never seen a corporation become so big that they're any match for the military, they're any match for the very solid institutions that exist in the society that inevitably mean that economically the corporation might have a lot of power, but like we've never seen Amazon or Google like literally lock people up or literally, knock down doors and take people, imprison people or enslave people for that matter. Like,
Right. I hear what you're saying. We don't see that.
yeah.
Okay. Usually. And we definitely don't see as much violence. And I, you could say that, yeah, Google should just get an army and to fight. I think a big reason is that they don't have any desire to fight violently. I think that, yeah, you're right. They're no match for the government. A big reason that they don't have an army is because it just wouldn't there's no reason, but also, yeah, it's the government itself, a centralized bureau that is that would never allow that to happen. So it's one of the tenets of communism that's holding back capitalism. And more than that,
Interesting.
I would say that, yeah, there are actually big power struggles between the government and these big corporations all the time. And we've seen, the Mark Zuckerberg trial, and where it was like trying to argue about, okay, where is the government's line of authority versus theirs? What can they tell? Can they break apart monopolies? Can they tell them what they can post, what they can't post? And I would say even that Facebook does have more power over the American government in a lot of arenas in terms of what's being told to the what beliefs are being pushed on on people. I would say, TikTok itself, you have people in charge on the board of what can be distributed and what can't, what rules, and
Right.
the government's not involved at all, and so they have, yeah, more power, maybe not in a physical, violent, or threatening, physically threatening manner, but in terms of power, sometimes they have way more power in certain areas. And last thing, I would even say that, yeah, the government is beholden to some of these corporations. My favorite, one of my favorite tropes in like fantasy is when you have like the Iron Bank in Game of Thrones or something that like is funding different wars. And so you think, oh, it's the king who's in charge, but no, it's actually like the Iron Bank who funded his war, who he's now in debt to, because you have to have a valid banking. You can't just like take over the banks, otherwise your whole economy would fail. But really, they are beholden to them behind the scenes. The Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, isn't part of the government. It was separated. So they control. That's like a big part of it. They control certain economic policies that dictate the U.S. government. You'd think, oh, the U.S. government would really be in charge, but no, the president can't tell the reserve what to do. Pretty sure.
I don't know. I didn't know anything that you just said, so you might be right.
All right. I mean, we could. I'll just fact check that quickly.
Okay.
But yeah, what do you want to say in response? And then we'll get to specifically the Cold War, who was in the right and who was not.
Man, this bait and switch. The Cold War was not in the notes, by the way, so I didn't prepare for it. I guess the only thing I would say in response to that is that, Yes. In a free society, you're going to have people who get to the top and have a lot of power, or there's a lot of consolidated power and resources at the top. But give me that over the completely centralized authority needed to run a communist country any day, because even though Facebook has a lot of power, but there's also Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it, and there's TikTok, as you said, and there's there's Google, but there's also who competes with Google?
Apple.
Apple. Well, Microsoft and Apple. Yeah. Okay. They all compete a little bit in some respects.
Nvidia is now the richest corporation on the planet.
Fantastic. So you have rich corporations, of course, with a lot of power, but there are many of them, and they compete with each other. And you even said in some ways they have more power than the government itself because of Facebook's ability to affect what we actually see online. And Facebook has the power to grab our attention much more than the government does. I'll take that as well over all of that power. In the communist regime, it would seem that Facebook would not be allowed to exist, and the government would take over control of social media. So I will take distributed power among the top, and competition between Facebook and the government, Facebook and Twitter, whatever have you, then all of that being centralized into one authority.
Mm-hmm. Even if one of these authorities is, in essence, I'm not sure in communism, they have elections in communism, right?
I didn't think so.
I think in theory, you can have elections in communism. It's just, they're not free and fair elections because of corruption. But I don't think, we should also fact check that.
Okay.
But in theory, if I had to choose between Facebook and the government, I'd rather the government dictate what I guess, if someone has to dictate what information we're exposed to, I'd rather the government, because they're elected, rather than Mark Zuckerberg, who's just one guy.
But we have the freedom to stop using Mark Zuckerberg's platform.
Well, I'd say that I'd argue on the one hand, yes, and so that's why I'm saying there still is competition with it, which is in the real world between all of these, which is fine. There is a certain amount that we're ignoring when it comes to addiction and the techniques that Facebook uses, the psychological techniques to make the algorithm more engaging to what you want to see. And then, so I don't know. It just seems that, like, if I had to choose between Facebook, which has no oversight, and the government, you could argue I could turn off a government TV, I guess. But I hear what you're saying. Competition is usually better.
It's better, and also it's not just the competition; it's also the empowering to the average citizen, rather than giving away our power to the government and say, government, save us from the addiction that Facebook is putting into our kids' heads. We should solve that problem. We should say, hey, we should be strong parents who parent our kids to do productive things rather than be on social media all day. We ourselves should set a good example for our kids and not be on social media all day. We should take back our own empowerment of bettering ourselves and combating the bad influences of capitalism, which we are at the end of the day free to not partake in, because that's
right. But this comes back to that same conflict of, do we do things, do we say policy because of principle or because of human tendencies? And I think that you could say that we should take charge, which would be great in theory, in principle, but human nature is not going to do that. The only one that's actually going to manage to do that and work together is going to be some government that has, a bunch of principles hopefully lined out, and has the power to implement them. I don't think, it's just not feasible for you to get together with a whole bunch of parents and build you could build some group, but
you're assuming that every solution must be a top-down solution, that we must first create a commission, the Commission of Combating Facebook Addiction, and that commission must then dictate to everyone what it concluded, and then we'll make sure top down that everyone follows the policy. Instead, there's a bottom up approach that really is the way that so many things actually happen with humans, which is just people naturally just realize that this isn't good for them, and all it takes is one pair of friends to help each other out. They sort of get talking and they say, "Hey, I think we'd be better off if we spent more time playing guitar rather than on social media." And they start doing that, and then they make other friends, and then influence their friends. Like it happens from the people. And there's so many good things about a society that happen from the people and must happen from the people in order for that society to be strong. And those things, it's not
So much so that it could overcome these.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so it matters about your faith, I guess, in humanity.
Okay.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying. But let's talk
about war.
about war. The Cold War.
The Cold War.
Which side was right? Were any sides right? What was the Cold War? It was this conflict that raged after World War II ended. The German Empire or whatever defeated. All the land was kind of split between America, the West, the British, the French, and Russia,
Mm-hmm.
who were the victors of the war. So
Yeah.
they got to divvy everything up, and then instead of fighting over land, I mean, they were still fighting over land, but it was a Cold War. It wasn't, they were taking over through policy, through ideology,
Mm-hmm.
and there were certain states,
It was
China joined, I don't know about North Korea maybe at that point. A whole bunch of states and countries where it was basically, are you with the West and capitalism, or are you with the Russia and the East and communism?
Yeah.
And it was a very simplified version, but then this led to all of these proxy wars within all of these, culminating in Germany, the Berlin Wall, which separated the East from the West, because that's where the war ended, and that's where they split it between those two. So it was all about spreading the influence of capitalism, communism, who was going to build more nukes. They all started building a lot more nukes after stockpiling, and then it came dangerously close to, who's going to nuke who first, and you kind of wonder why they were fighting, because
so they weren't fighting.
right, but why they were like so close to. There was the Cuban Missile Crisis where
Mm-hmm.
Russia brought nuclear missiles to Cuba, which was right outside America, and they felt threatened.
Right.
Well, they were definitely fighting, but not
Was
but
there
a Cold War. They were
was there-
flying bombers over each other.
But were there any bombs actually dropped?
Not for sure, not in America or Soviet Russia.
Mm-hmm.
There were, in Vietnam, they were fighting. There was real fighting against, I think, one side propped up by the Soviet Union, one side by America.
Okay.
There was fighting. It just was
There
the Yom Kippur War. That's Egypt was propped up by Soviet Union, America by Israel by America.
Okay.
Israel shot down real Soviet Russian fighters, fighter jets with Russian soldiers inside.
Uh-huh. So there was some fighting, maybe by proxy, we could say.
Yeah.
Between the United States and the Soviet Union, but there wasn't ever actually a war between the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
A war? A warm war.
A war.
They were ready to blow each other to end the world. They had their hands on the triggers.
Correct, but that's why it was a Cold War. Both sides were very prepared for war. Both sides were like, okay, this could escalate at any second. We're keeping our finger very much on the pulse, but there never was any war between the United States and the Soviet Union.
I mean,
it never really broke out. Is that crazy to say?
I mean, it broke out, but not into a warm war.
Okay, very well. Anyway, so why were they fighting?
Or, yeah, I guess why or who was right?
Who was right? It was a war of ideology, right? It was after World War II, after the defeat of fascism, is democracy and republicanism and capitalism going to be the primary ideology of the world, or is communism going to be the primary ideology of the world? That was what it was about, right?
In a simplistic form.
Okay.
Probably better than anything we could do because we're not
Okay.
we're not scholars necessarily of the.
So who was right is the side that had the better ideology, and the better ideology is obviously capitalism.
All right.
Soviet Union is, and that's why the Soviet Union collapsed, because they were built on a faulty ideology, an ideology that was incongruent with nature's law
and economic laws.
Yeah,
they ultimately collapsed in 1991 because of recession and just economic collapse. Yeah.
Because communism doesn't work, and yeah,
or at least Russian communism.
Communism does not work.
If we look at China is a communist country. In a weird way, they're doing very well because of capitalism, because they're able to sell so much.
I'm glad you said that. China has incorporated capitalism very much into their economics, and it's for that reason that they are successful.
Mm-hmm. But technically, still communist.
Sure, but
not really.
Yeah, meaning
they just call it's a communist in name.
It's a communism sustained by
corruption.
capitalism. Yeah, it's a communism sustained by capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on to
all right, I'm glad.
Out of chronological order.
I'm sure we could have discussed the Cold War more, but I got nothing more on the Cold War.
All right, we're gonna do something easy. Well, okay, fine. Let's start with the American Revolution.
There we go.
Or should we do American Civil War?
I want to do them both together, actually. I linked them. I have a whole argument prepared that really links the two, because initially when I started thinking about the American Revolution, the Revolutionary War. Okay, so who was right in the Revolutionary War? Well, there's obviously a particular side that I want to say is right. It's very hard for me.
The British.
It's very hard for me to even consider that the British were right in the American Revolutionary War. But I wanted to get at the heart of what colonial America's claim was, what their stance was, and what they were fighting for. And it's summed up in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson's words.
So we have a whole prepared statement from Cal.
All right, so I'll try to paraphrase in modern English as I go along. But okay, so the beginning of the Declaration of Independence, not the very beginning, but about one paragraph in, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. All right, so the basic point there is
you heard it here first, folks.
The basic point there is that a government is only legitimate by the consent of the governed, that it's really the people who have the ultimate power, right? The government, in the government in a kind of practical sense, has power, but it's power that is granted to them by the people. In the truest sense, the power rests with the people. The government is only legitimate because the people say, yes, government, you are allowed to govern us because this is for our benefit, because we have formed this society where you, government, have this responsibility of doing public services and doing the things that you do. You have the responsibility of governing us because we have granted you that responsibility. But the people have the right and the freedom to take that away if the government becomes contradictory to the people's needs, the people's happiness. That's the basic point so far. Let me just keep going because there's some good stuff here.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think this touches on a few themes that I think we want to discuss.
Okay.
Such as colonization and oppression.
Okay.
And that's definitely, and treason and rising up. Mm-hmm. And so let's keep going.
All right. So continuing Thomas Jefferson here. that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So once again, it's the people who are in charge of their own happiness, in charge of their own society. It's the people who create the government. And so if there's a government that is not conducive to the needs of the society, is the society's right to abolish that government and put in a government that serves them. Prudence, so this is going to be important later on. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So this is a very profound point that Thomas Jefferson is making, and it's really a very honest point to make in this particular document, which is meant to say, hey, King George, we no longer accept your sovereignty. We're going to make our own. We're going to make our own country here. For Thomas Jefferson to throw in there, like not all, but most of history and most experience points to the conclusion that what we are doing is crazy and destructive. That what we are doing is actually bad for us. You know, to throw off the
Yoke.
to throw off the stuff that holds the society together, right? Because, and I'll be the first to say
Anarchy.
this. I'll be the first to say this. A dictatorship is probably better than anarchy. Of course, it depends on scale here. It depends how bad the dictatorship is, how bad the anarchy is. But basically, a bad government is better than no government at all. And I think Thomas Jefferson is kind of making that point here that there's great risk involved here in saying we're going to do this better. But he then goes on to say that you, King George, have done it so badly that we're going to take that risk and hope that we do it better than you do. Okay, to finish it up. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. That's not the end of the Declaration of Independence, but the end of the part that I copied.
Okay. So I didn't know some of that stuff. I thought that, they just didn't like the king, the British,
Mm-hmm.
and they just wanted them off their back. They didn't like taxes, so they threw the tea in the river.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting point that he made that maybe it's not necessarily a good thing to take down the current form of ruling.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was thinking about what makes a side right in a conflict, and what I wrote is basically problematic because it's open to interpretation and specific context.
Okay.
But something along the lines of, if you're fighting for self-determination, so that means fighting for your own ability to rule yourself. That necessitates, some other government entity that is currently ruling over you, oppressing you possibly, usually, and they colonized you, where they are putting their rule over you, whereas you, the people, identify as separate,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to have that rule
Mm-hmm.
over you. So it's not. So I had written, fighting for self-determination is the right side, but as long as you're willing to live peacefully alongside others.
Okay.
And what that means is what that entails is that whatever government you're replacing the previous government with, it has to be a better system.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be one that's willing to live in peace. So you want self-determination, but not so that you could just, attack others but that you just want to have self-determination for yourself. And so it kind of plays into what you're saying about what are you replacing it with? What if there's anarchy? It's not just enough to take down what you perceive as an oppressive regime.
Right. Easy to destroy, hard to build.
Mhm.
It's not enough just to destroy something that you disapprove of. You have to build something better. At the end of the day, you have to build over destroy. If you have to destroy something in order to build something new, so be it. But ultimately, the goal is to build, not to destroy.
And so the other thing I'd written was fighting for expansionism is okay as long as it's with the consent of the people who you're, let's say, liberating, or for example, that want to be ruled by you, or if it's for security reasons. And
if it's the first one, why are you fighting then? If the people
because maybe they're oppressed by some other government
okay
or entity.
Okay.
And I don't know, you could, or for security. So the problem with this definition is that each government can see their own side as that. So you could say, if you're the British, you could argue, hey, a lot of people do want our rule there in America. There are a lot of loyalists.
Yeah.
You could say, oh, we're fighting for security because you're attacking us. You're attacking our fleets. What are this is for to uphold our economy. Our economy is going to suffer. This is our, I don't know. People are going to view us as weak. Our empire might collapse. I don't know what. Maybe it was harder, maybe to justify British colonialism than maybe in other conflicts. But I'm sure that they made arguments on their side that weren't just, hey, we want to rule others and take their taxes. Let's do it. We want to do that. Whatever they presented, I guess they had a king, a monarch.
Yeah.
So there was less of a government, but you could find the same behavior of governments nowadays. But at least there, it's more clear in the American case where they wanted self-determination for the sole purpose of not necessarily, like, they didn't have anything resentful against the British people specifically. It's not like they were going to take back America and then start attacking England on their home soil.
Right.
So yeah.
I also wonder whether the average British person living in England proper cared about keeping America as a British colony, or as 13 British colonies. You follow me? Like,
it was probably so far away for them. They're like, hey, I don't want to send my children to fight in these forever wars. Or maybe that's too much of a modern concept, and they just loved it, and they were, proud of going off to fight.
I would not be surprised if what you said does have some truth, even to the attitudes, at least of some people. But it's harder to imagine the average British person living in England having much stake in the American Revolutionary War.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be more a war between American colonists and the British king, the British government, the British Empire, but not against the British.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the British probably were saying, what do we care? It's all the way over there. Why are we investing all this money and stuff there? But I mean, there was wealth that was coming from the British power,
certainly.
But I don't think they necessarily saw that on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably just the government saying, hey, if we don't quash this, people won't respect us. We're getting a lot of money by taxing these people. This is important for keeping us in power. We can't have everyone starting to revolt against us.
Right. It's always very hard to let go of something you feel you own. Meaning the British Empire believed that they own the American colonies. These are part of the British.
I mean, they started it according to capitalism. Maybe they should.
Well, okay.
I'm just throwing that out there.
But I'd have to understand the history better, because there's the Mayflower and Plymouth Rock, and those were just people who came over.
Right. I guess a lot of it was started by Spain, but that was a little further south. But But yeah, British power was definitely consolidated over the colonies over time as well. Pretty sure they fought with the French over their control.
Mm.
So they just grew in control. They didn't necessarily like start every single colony with British money, let's say. A lot of it was
Uh-huh.
built, I guess, from the ground up by independent colonialists.
Hmm. Yeah, so I do think that when a nation or when a society, when they now view themselves as separate from a larger empire that is nominally rules over them, when they see themselves as separate from them, when they no longer feel that they have a beneficial relationship with the empire, that the state of being a part of the empire is not beneficial to them, or at least is not as beneficial to them as they could achieve through independence. I do believe it's a fundamental right of a people to say we're actually just going to do this ourselves, and assuming they are capable of doing that, then it's not for anybody to stop them.
Mhm. So, what wound up happening, from my vague understanding of the American Revolution, was, pamphlets were shared, about how
Common sense.
Common Sense by Thomas Paine,
Exactly.
about how we shouldn't be, paying tribute to the British Empire. What have
Mhm.
the British done for us? And they, they were taxed on tea in Boston, and then they threw the tea into the harbor, and then that sparked, all of a sudden these skirmishes, which then grew into fights of trying to attack the British and attack their ships, and then you had George Washington as a general. Who led all of these battles at all of these forts to take over these forts and push the British back up into Canada
Mm.
or further away back to England. So it was quite violent. I don't think it was on the scale of, as far as I know, the British weren't just like massacring Americans. It was soldiers versus soldiers.
I think so.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they were very similar culturally,
Right.
ethnically.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of, are you going to fight for, if you're a soldier in the British Army, are you going to fight do your duty as a soldier, fight for the British kingdom, or are you going to, on the American side, fight for your freedom?
Hmm.
So the question that I would have is, could this have happened non-violently, or is that just not possible? Is it just, and it goes back to this principle or this theme that I had like said before about like, do we do things in principle or because of human tendencies? Is policy dictated by human tendencies, which is we're just not going to get the British out of here without violence.
Hmm.
They're going to hold on to their power. They're not going to want to talk about it. Or whereas in theory, yeah, ideally this would be done through diplomacy, through understanding. Um, and in the end, it was probably a mixture of both because the British did surrender at some point and like say, okay,
Yeah.
it didn't come down to the genocide of one side or another. Or
Yeah, that is an important point. That when talking about who was correct in this war, what was the conditions for victory for the American colonists? It wasn't defeat of the British Empire. It was just that the British Empire, the Treaty of Paris that they ended up signing at the end of the war. In that treaty, the British Empire acknowledged the United States as a country. So that's really what the United States was fighting for, simply that we are now our own country and treat us as such. We'll trade as separate countries.
right, they immediately went into like trading, right? It's not like they hated each other.
I don't know. I mean, there was the War of 1812, only like 20 years later.
Oh yeah, when the Canadians burnt down the White House, which is like a skewing of history because it was the British and
I never heard that it was the Canadians. I always heard it was the British.
it was the British because that's what the Canadians were at the time.
Okay, I gotcha.
But retroactively, they're the Canadians.
I see.
So we hold that over the U.S.
Nice. You very good job.
but thanks, I did it myself. So could it have been done peacefully? Probably not.
Well, in a sense, perhaps, because, for example, Canada.
Through Confederation, gained its independence through peaceful means.
Right.
We
Or
still
an effective independence,
an
right?
effective independence. We still have the queen, the monarchy, the king now, I guess, on the money.
Mm-hmm.
There is still a symbolic tribute, I think, given to the monarchy.
Oh, wow.
Very minor,
Yeah.
whatever it is. There's the Governor General, which is appointed by the British and is technically a position of power, but I think it's more of a ceremonial position now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but it came much later, and I guess yeah. Well, I mean, the wealth of Canada wasn't maybe as critical for the British, or maybe the Canadian Confederation only happened because the British saw what happened in America,
Oh, that's very interesting.
or because their competition was with France as well, and if this way, if they leave, then France doesn't win either, and so they rather than maybe it was also because they didn't want to invest anymore in putting all of this military across the ocean. They just didn't feel like they could control it. It just wasn't feasible.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily out of diplomacy at the time. And I should remember my Canadian history a bit better. But there were events leading up to it, maybe some small, very, very small scale events of, but yeah, it was pretty much mostly peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll give some other examples of where the British power was overthrown. In Israel, Palestine, it was overthrown pretty violent. It wasn't the most violent, but it wasn't. It was definitely, there were reprisals on each side. The British tried cracking down on the Jewish Israeli fighters, the Irgun, and arresting them, sentencing them to death, and the Irgun and the Lehi, and that was really the essential conflict between the Irgun, which took more of a proactive, I guess you could say, violent approach to deal with the British, versus the Haganah, which wanted to deal with the British through more peaceful means. Not that the Haganah also wasn't, never went to war against the British, but in theory they wanted to resolve things with the British more peacefully, whereas the Irgun was saying, no, they're killing our people. We have to. Not that there were some instances. Usually they targeted military infrastructure, but there were some. And they would warn, before they blew up stuff. They didn't enjoy killing the British, but there were some extreme points where the British killed some Jewish fighters, so they killed some British soldiers.
Yeah, I think there was a sequence of those types of events. I think where Begin was clear that they would kill a British soldier for every Jewish fighter that was killed.
Right, and then they stopped killing Jewish fighters. But was that right? But the British, were stopping the Jewish refugees from coming in after the Holocaust. You had all of these people in displaced persons camp that had nowhere to go. They wanted to come to Israel, but the British wouldn't let them in. Either way, there's a whole fascinating history. But the British decided this is not worth it. We're leaving. We put this question of what will happen with the land to the UN and so forth. In India's case, there's the famous Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes.
Who, despite British crackdowns, and I think there were maybe some there were some people that said, oh, we should fight back. Mahatma Gandhi was adamant about peaceful demonstration. He took on a fast of 50 plus days or something crazy, and by then a lot of the British colonies had already fallen and the British left, so it might have been a little easier, but still I think it was still like late 40s, or 50s. I don't know. We could look that up. By the way, I just want to say the Federal Reserve is independent from the government.
Ah,
They have all their policies independent, but according to the Google, they still ultimately answer to the U.S. government.
okay.
But they just don't. They don't have to be so transparent with them. Um, when did India gain independence? That was in 1947. So I guess it was still all happening at the same time.
1 year
The-
before Israel.
Right. So I guess maybe Israel, gained independence more because of India. So, or I don't know.
I don't know.
It's hard to tell, but he managed to do it by bringing world opinion and sympathy to his side, to the Indian side, to say, hey, British have exploited India's natural resources for too long, its population. Um, it's time for them to leave. And the British, credit to them, for they left eventually, non-violent. I mean, sort of non-violently, or at least they left. A lot of other empires, colonies would have said, "No way, we're fighting until like they're at least going to fight first before giving up, before saying this just isn't worth it." But the British, credit to them as a civilized nation, said, "Okay, we're still going to keep all your jewels, but." But yeah, they did. They left. And then they slowly accepted this lower position in the world than they previously enjoyed, because it's a shadow of the British Empire is a shadow of its former self nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
One, and it's not like they all died. I mean, World War II was a big blow to them, so I guess they did have a lot of loss due to World War II. But still, they I don't know, they accepted it. So
I know close to nothing about the Indian independence from the British Empire, so I'm just nodding my head during that part. But yeah.
right, but it's a fascinating. I sort of see it as like a counter example, an outlier.
Okay. Wait. By the way, I see that Gandhi. You said India got independence in 1947.
Yeah,
So I see that Gandhi died in 1948 by assassination.
yeah. By yeah, I don't know who. He might have been an British loyalist. Uh, and that's something else we could discuss. Should assassinations should be like should we discuss even the point of an assassination, or is that giving credit to the person uh, and like recognizing it for what they tried to do? Like,
Should we even discuss assassination as a practical means to an end?
no, not even that. I'm just saying, if there was, let's say someone assassinates a political figure, then the first question is, oh, why? Why'd they do this? And then we look at their manifesto, and then they have all of this. Oh, I did this because this and this and this. But first of all, a large portion of these people are just like absolutely crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's most of the time it's not justified.
Okay.
So what winds up happening is when you discuss, oh, why did this person, commit this terrorist attack? Why this and this? You wind up um, not justifying it, but like uh, recognizing it as like platforming it as some sort of legitimate
Mm.
position.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe it shouldn't matter at all why this person did this terrible thing.
Right. You should never assassinate anybody.
I mean, maybe you should if it's Hitler or an oppressive, but assuming this was a bad assassination,
right.
then should we say, hey, why did this person do it? I guess it's important because we want to identify it so it doesn't happen again.
Okay. Yeah, to guard future political leaders from future assassinations, it might be beneficial to understand the motivations.
Right. But what winds up happening as a side effect is people say, huh, okay, this person assassinated this person because of this. now we have to go to war against this sect of people that tried assassinating our leader, and then hey, maybe he accomplished his goal by assassinating this person. Like, if this is a crazy person, then like if I assassinate the president because I think uh, green ketchup is better than red ketchup, then who cares? Like, why? Like, and then the newspaper will then say, "Oh, we looked into this guy," because everyone wants to know. It's just the human curiosity.
Yeah.
This guy said he prefers green ketchup over red ketchup, and he knows the president liked red ketchup, so he assassinated him. And then we're like, okay, well, this is I guess this is a position that people have, and what are we going to do about this? It gives credence to it.
Yes.
So I don't know. It's just something I have. Every time something terrible happens and people ask why, that's what I ask myself.
Whether it's
yeah.
even right to ask why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good question in many instances. But by the way, I'm reading Wikipedia, and Gandhi was assassinated by Nathuram Godse. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, but a Hindu nationalist who seemed to have conspired with several other people with links to the Hindu Mahasabha and the something. I'm not even gonna be able
The
to.
AI overview says that it was due to his belief that Gandhi favored Muslims and was too lenient towards Pakistan during the partition of India.
Yeah, I see that the kind of the groups that conspired with the assassin. This one says it's an Indian far right volunteer paramilitary organization.
There was a lot of conflict between the Muslims and the Hindus.
Okay.
And the split, and then there was Bangladesh, which like split the region into two sides. Like India goes right between the two Muslim majority countries, and so how would one get to the other? Which is a common problem in war and like the separate like once you have one. Like if you have the same population that's separated in the middle by another one, then that's just asking for trouble. We see that in Syria today, where the Jewish population is separated by one in Israel, one in Syria, and in between there's like a Sunni Muslim majority, and so like everyone feels threatened because they can't just like easily go from one side to another. It happens, we said in India and Pakistan, Bangladesh, happens with the Palestinians, Gaza, West Bank, and it's just always. I mean, I guess with Alaska and America and Canada, it's not such a problem, but because no one wants to live there. No, I guess people live there, but
Where, Alaska?
Alaska,
I'd love to visit. Live there, probably not, but
right?
I would love
At
to
least
visit.
half the year. It's probably nice.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, so just if we look at an oppressive regime today, like Iran, the only way to get rid of them is through violence, not through diplomacy, right? I guess that's a little different because that's not really colonialism. That's just an oppressive regime. So maybe it's easier to get rid of colonialism because they could always say, okay, we'll go back home. But if there's like a regime, it's not like the regime has anywhere else to go, which is also a very important factor in war. You have to have somewhere to retreat to. If you have nowhere to retreat, if you're backed into a corner, you're going to fight.
Like Israel.
Yeah, or even like Gaza. It's both
Or
sides.
like Gaza.
Both
Yeah.
sides feel like they're backed into a corner, and it's just kind of neither side's really going to hold back or surrender.
Although it's more confusing to me why the Palestinians are backed into a corner than that the Israelis were backed into a corner. Like, I don't know the details of this, but why is it that none of the Arab countries have brought in Palestinians into their country?
Mm-hmm. Well, so one thing to keep in mind is probably that there are still cultural differences.
Yeah.
They're not all the same.
No.
But yeah, if they truly cared about saving human lives, they would accept them at least as refugees.
Right.
But they're so afraid of losing the Palestinian cause that these refugees would never be able to come back or something, that they would rather sacrifice them than then
Yeah.
allow them in. So it's a very unfortunate reality. I, you know, I personally believe that if it were the other way around, I don't think the government of Israel, every time that there's a war, the government of Israel lets its people leave. If you want to get out, I mean, they shut down the airports, but because of security reasons, but through ships and boats and through other crossings, they never stop them. Um,
Wait, you're saying when there's a war, Israel lets its citizens leave the country? That's your point?
yeah,
And
unless they really have to shut down the airport because it's being bombed.
uh-huh.
But Palestinian leadership will not let its own people leave because they're afraid they'll never be allowed back,
Uh-huh.
so it's an unfortunate
Mm-hmm.
reality, I think, of the war.
Have we ventured into Israel-Palestine? Because there was more I wanted to say about the American Revolutionary War and the American Civil War.
Yeah, we haven't even discussed the Civil War.
Indeed.
But yeah, let's finish up the revolution and then move to the Civil War.
Okay. So there are several challenges that one could make to the principles laid out by Thomas Jefferson and the summary that I just provided about why the American cause in the Revolutionary War was legitimate. Do you want to mention those challenges, or should I?
You should probably. You're saying there are challenges. Why?
There are big questions that someone could. There are lots of holes one could possibly pick.
Other than the anarchy, the vacuum that it would fill, that a revolution would leave behind.
Other than that, yes.
And other than, yeah, okay, yeah. What?
All right, so let's look at modern day the United States. What if I'm from Indiana? Indiana is kind of just smack in the middle of the country. Not really, but we kind of think of ourselves as being smack in the middle. What if Indiana just said, hey, we're actually our own country? And listen, governments are only legitimate by the consent of the governed. Okay? The United States government is only a legitimate sovereign of Indiana because we Indiana people are okay with it. We ultimately have the ultimate power of our self-governance. So we're actually not okay with it anymore, and we're now a separate country.
So this sounds like the Civil War more.
Okay, I'm glad we made that connection. Because yes,
yeah, it's similar to the vacuum. I guess that a revolution would leave. Or what if you had states that wanted to stay part of the British Empire, like Canada?
Okay.
So what are you gonna force them to revolt? Like this revolution, was it really the will of the people, or is anything ever truly the will of the people? No, there's maybe it was 60-40. I don't know. Maybe a lot of people enjoyed the British rule.
There were certainly loyalists in the American colonies. Was it 60-40? I don't know. There was also certainly a lot of work to convince the average people to take up arms and to say, yeah, this is important. We have to go to war. Thomas Paine wrote his Common Sense pamphlet. Mm-hmm. It took some convincing.
A lot of people are going to die. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait. So sorry. What? Where are we now?
So what if Indiana wants to just gain autonomy? So then every state, wants to rule itself, which I don't know. The American.
Well, hold on. I actually was thinking just Indiana. Let's just focus on Indiana for a second. Okay. We can focus on a different state if you want to, but I'm using that as an example.
So it would be ironic if the revolutionaries were now like, hey, you have to be with us. We're going to force you to be part of the 13 colonies or whatever. After they were tired of the British forcing them to be a part of Britain.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, but what is the exact issue? Did the revolutionaries force these other states to be part of?
No, not as far as I know. Okay. I'm just raising an objection to the principle of the matter, right? Okay. Thomas Jefferson laid out that essentially a group of people, if they're willing to call themselves a group, to be cohesively, part of a society together, they have a right to say what government is governs them. And if they say it's not the British Empire, then it's not the British. The British Empire is no longer a legitimate government of them because they no longer accept it.
And if it's the Union versus the South seceding,
there we go. All
There
right.
we go.
So,
Walked right into that one.
what makes the Confederacy different from the American colonists in their claim? That's what I wanted to discuss. And I do have some answers prepared, but I feel
Well, I
like
think the main given reason is slavery.
okay, slavery. So the Confederacy's claim to independence or to independence from the Union is not legitimate because they own slaves. The Confederacy.
You're saying the Confederacy's their claim to secede
Their claim to secede. Their claim
is
to
not legitimate because they had slaves.
that's the
Common.
that's the statement that I'm throwing out there to be examined.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess maybe you could. So maybe you'd say even if like that slavery was kind of just an excuse. Let's say that they didn't have slaves, the Union would probably, I don't know, maybe still go to war and say, "Hey, you can't secede. You have to be part of us."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that the Union, despite Abraham Lincoln's stark anti-slavery stance and the prevailing support for abolishing slavery in the North at the time, they still wanted to fight to retain the Confederacy in the country, even though the Confederacy was adamant about keeping the slaves. And it was only on, it was I actually just learned this last night, learning the history of it. So the Civil War started in, I believe it's 1861, and it went until 1865. It wasn't until 1863 that Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, because it wasn't an official stance of the North when the war started that we're going to abolish slavery in the entire country. It was only as the war carried on and as the North started to gain momentum and it looked like the Union was going to win, they then said, "Oh, well, we're essentially going to now, because we're going to be we're going to make it part of being victorious in this war to get our way about slavery and abolish it in the whole country." But at the onset of the war, it wasn't a policy that the South should get rid of their slaves. It was as the country expands into the Western territories, new states would not be slave states as new states are added to the Union, and much of the North had already abolished slavery. The South, we're not going to touch your slaves. We're not going to say you can't have slaves. But as the nation expands into the West, those states are going to be non-slave states. That was essentially the policy that was becoming a thing, and especially Lincoln, I think, was very much in favor of that, and he was elected, of course, and it was right after his election that the first group of Southern states seceded, without even any real threat to their slaves. The Union had not yet said that we're going to abolish slavery. That's just a little history that I got clear yesterday, which I think is relevant when talking about who was right in the war. Sorry, I'm forgetting now how that connects back to what we were just talking about. But
Well, so we're discussing if one part of the country wants to secede, then they should be allowed to. But according to Thomas Jefferson's own admission,
mm-hmm.
and whereas it seems, according to what you're saying, that slavery wasn't one of these issues at the time, it kind of came up later as justification for not letting the South secede and then going to war with them.
Well, no, slavery was certainly at the heart of the Civil War.
Ultimately.
Not just ultimately.
Even at the beginning.
Even at the beginning.
So what were you saying then? Because I thought you were saying.
So my point was that the Confederacy interpreted the Confederacy, the Southern states felt threatened by a prevailing policy in the rest of the country of abolishing slavery, as well as not allowing slavery to exist in new states added to the Union, as well as a victory for a very anti-slavery candidate in Abraham Lincoln. They felt threatened by all this, and so they seceded, saying we want to ensure that our institution of slavery will be maintained because we foresee that staying a part of the United States will eventually result in slavery being abolished nationwide. But that hadn't actually happened yet. and there hadn't really been a real threat of that happening yet. My point is simply that one is just a historical point, clarifying the details, and two, it is relevant to how we assess the Confederacy's claim of wanting to secede, wanting to be independent, and then fighting a war over it. What exactly was threatened? What even if I accept, let's say for a second, for the sake of discussion, that I accept the state autonomy argument, in that a state should have the right to make its own laws about slavery. The North at the time, in 1860, acknowledged this as well, and had not made any move to abolish slavery in the southern states or in the slave states. It was this. It seems to be more a matter of, it's kind of like the way people threatened to move when Donald Trump was a candidate. People threatened to move to Canada or to Mexico or to wherever if Trump was elected. And then when he's elected, people say, there are people who said, not my president. And it didn't happen, but you can imagine, what if like the state of Washington had seceded from the Union based on Trump being president? It didn't happen, but you can imagine it happening, and it kind of feels like that in 1860, where like, what really did Lincoln do to you? He hasn't done anything to you. You're just foreseeing that he's going to do something to you. He's going to take away your slaves. He didn't even do it yet, and you're seceding. So that's part of why the South's immediate position leading up to the Civil War strikes me as one of more driven by pride than by principle.
Okay. I mean, I get what you're saying, that it seemed a little premature, but I still think it's a bit of a jump to just assume that it's because of pride. And you're sort of saying that it was actually the South's slavery was actually, or the abolishment of slavery was the South's excuse for seceding. Are you saying that they wanted to anyways, or it was a matter of pride that the Union would even threaten to take away their rights, that they felt that their pride was dishonored or hurt?
It's possible that the South also had
Plans.
What plans?
Plans to do it. I don't. What are you saying?
It's possible that the South also had cultural differences, or I don't know, some other reason of feeling separate from much of the rest of the country. But it's clear from the secession documents, secession proclamations of several of the states, that slavery was the prominent reason for at least several of them. There are other states who joined the Confederacy who didn't explicitly talk about slavery in their Declaration of Secession, but there are like alternative historical theories about maybe there were other reasons, but based on the little research that I've done in the last 24 hours, it's predominantly agreed upon by historians that slavery was the main issue.
Okay, but so I hear what you're saying about it being premature, but I still think that it's kind of irrelevant, in my opinion, when talking about the justification of the war, because what wound up happening was that the Union didn't want them to secede because of slavery. So maybe you could say that, yeah, their fears were founded. And I don't know, maybe if they hadn't seceded, the Union wouldn't have done it, but it's an interesting take. But when just discussing who was in the right, should a country be allowed to secede, or should states be allowed to secede to govern themselves because they want slavery or not? I don't know. To me, if we're gonna go on like the pride thing, I'll be honest, I don't know so much about the American history, but it strikes me as pride that the Union would go to war over the South seceding, and that it wasn't necessarily because of slavery. I mean, they said it was, and the South seceded because they felt threatened, and Abraham Lincoln was anti-slavery. But would he have actually, like in the same vein, would he have actually gone to war, or like if the South hadn't seceded and they just still maintained slavery and refused to give up their slaves, would he have then started a civil war to abolish slavery, or would he have not taken such a drastic
I
measure.
I do think it's very unclear that would have happened. I don't know if I'm not
So then it
at
seems
all.
to be more of like a pride thing. Oh, we have to keep the states together. You're not just going to walk out on us. The power of the government is dependent on not everyone want to do whatever they want.
Well, great. I'm glad we're having this conversation. So yes. So what makes the Confederacy so different from the American colonists, right? The American colonists literally just 80 years earlier, a little more, said, we want to be independent. We want to do things our way. Get off our backs.
Mhm.
And 80 years later, the Confederacy says, we want to be independent. We want to do things our way. Get
And
off our
have slaves.
Get off our backs.
But slaves.
And have slaves.
And have slaves.
But that's our way. That's
Right.
doing things our way.
But that's, I don't know. Looking back on it, that's a big thing. That's what happened. It'd be nice to discuss what would have happened if they didn't have slaves, and then we could say, oh, yeah, the South was in the right, maybe. But
wait.
I mean, I would say, yeah, if the South wants to secede, they should be able to secede. But they did have slaves. So it kind of screwed up.
Wait, so
the
you're
whole justification.
Your point right now is, in theory, if you wanted to secede, you're able to secede, but you have slaves, so you are a.
If the South said, fine, we'll we'll come to an agreement where we'll give up our slaves, but we want to become independent anyways because of pride reasons or individual culture, then I would say, yeah, they should have been in the right, or they would be in the right by saying that.
They would be in the right by seceding, but not because if it wasn't because of slavery. If it was just we want to be an independent culture, then they'd be in the right.
Right.
So here's a few things. I actually don't think it's right that you are always right if you want to just be independent. It really depends on the situation. And I realize that Thomas Jefferson's words, they sound nice, they sound good. It's very powerful words about independence and freedom. But
which is what they were meant to be. They were meant to.
Yeah.
They weren't meant as like a philosophical treatise. They were meant to be passionate, to fire up the people.
Possibly, although
create a national.
The main target audience was the king himself, of King George.
Okay. So it wasn't like a pamphlet passed around as much.
It wasn't as much a pamphlet passed around, although I'm sure
but it made it into the Constitution.
No.
Didn't you say the pursuit of happiness?
Yeah, that's in the Declaration of Independence.
Sorry, the Declaration of Independence. So it made it into there.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson was the primary author
Right.
of the Declaration of Independence.
And that was just like meant for the king.
Well,
but
it
wasn't meant for everyone else.
No, you have to accept, that they know that everyone is going to be reading this, even though it's nominally written to the king. It's nominally addressed to the King of England.
Does it say at the top to King George in the Declaration of Independence?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I probably not.
You have to steal it. That's the only way to find out.
Maybe not. But that is essentially what it is. You're declaring independence to the people who currently rule over you.
Did they mail it to him? Or did they just put it up in their own? Like, no, he would probably just burn it.
I think they mailed it. I think they mailed it to
So
him.
they made a second copy.
Oh, yeah. I think there are multiple copies.
Oh, okay.
The printing press was invented hundreds of years earlier.
Yeah, but I think they wrote this one out, no?
Well, yeah, but you can copy it afterwards, can't you?
By hand. Yeah, but everyone signed it. Like, I'm just saying, we have an authentic copy in the Library of Congress or whatever.
Yes. So how did we mail it to King George if we have the authentic copy? Yeah, maybe we didn't mail it to King George.
Or maybe we made multiple handwritten copies and everyone signed it multiple times. I don't know. But maybe there's a second Declaration of Independence somewhere that's like just as real that we could steal.
Okay. Cool. Where was I? Yeah, so the words of Thomas Jefferson, they're powerful words, and they're true to a certain degree. There is something real there about the principle of autonomy and self-governance. But you can't just apply that principle to every situation and say like, oh, well, what about here? What about here? What about here? No. There's tons of
like I want to create Benjitoria.
Yeah.
in Israel.
There are tons of criteria.
I want to secede.
Right.
There's a Family Guy episode, Pretoria.
Oh.
Where he secedes, and then all of these. It was one of the earlier seasons where it was still good, and he creates his own land. He can do whatever he wants. People like go there to, do illegal things because it's just his house. And then the American government goes to war on his house and starts like bombing the crap out of it.
Oh, interesting.
Something like that.
Okay.
if I remember.
Meaning he declared just himself as being
Oh.
an independent country.
Well, technically, what happened was he wanted to install a pool, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I'm confusing this with The Simpsons. But I think he wanted to install a pool, and then they looked in the zoning laws, and according to the maps, his house just didn't exist.
Okay.
So it just had no record of his house. So then he declared independence.
Okay. So yes, gotta combat that injustice. All right, so here I wrote down.
Well, it was more because he could, because he said, "Oh, I'm not part of it." Is it not because he was upset? He's just like, "Oh, see."
I see.
Yeah.
It's already in the official
Mhm.
record that he is not part of this country.
Right.
Okay, so I wrote down some significant differences between the Confederacy and the American colonists, and this is to my point that you can't just apply a principle to every situation. Every situation has tons of particulars and details, and there's a lot of criteria to consider. It's with a full view of the situation that we can conclude who was right and who was wrong, and also I'm not sure it's even necessarily right to talk about who was right and who was wrong. It's not necessarily a binary. Although perhaps in the Civil War it was a binary. But here. So
Well, a lot of people would disagree. So I don't know.
true.
But yeah, I think that's a fair statement. That probably should have been a disclaimer at the beginning.
Yeah.
That, we're going through who's right. We mean more like who we think is more right.
Yeah. And who we're going to try to argue in favor of.
Yeah.
Even though there's no ultimate.
Mhm. But a big theme is that in war there are two sides. Each side sees itself as right, and then they battle it out.
Right.
It's not like one side sees itself as wrong and says, "I'm going to battle it out anyways." It's all you justify in your head, whether retroactively, or like whether just because you're fighting, like no matter what you do, you're going to justify it, or because you have actual legitimate reasons.
Yeah. I do think it's important. I've mentioned this before. It's very important to me to distinguish between what somebody justifies in their head versus what is actually justified. People will feel they're right about a lot of things, but they won't actually be right. And there is kind of a way to figure that out, which I guess I'll just mention now while we're talking about it. I've mentioned nature's law a couple times just in this episode. There's a way things work. There's a built-in morality to the world we live in.
Like the strong eat the weak.
No, that
That's a law of nature that obviously is immoral.
But if the strong just continues eating the weak, then other medium to strong people will say, "Hey, this person's a total jerk," and they'll come to the defense of the weak. The ecosystem will organize itself around fighting this tyrannical, oppressive, eating the
It
weak.
will reach equilibrium. But
Yeah.
what if it takes thousands of years?
Well, it usually doesn't take thousands of years, but it can take a few years or more.
The whole Dark Ages, I don't know. It's just, my point is that as a law of nature, so you're saying the law of nature is that ultimately nature will, the right thing will come on top.
Yeah.
But when is that? And it could take forever. It also, like, I don't know, it just there are so many instances where the right one didn't come out on top. And
what's an instance where the right one didn't come out on top?
but it seems like a retroactive thing to say. I don't know that, like, okay, whatever's now is the right thing, but like, what if we lived not now? And I mean, there's still plenty of I don't know, oppressive regimes around the country that you'll say, oh well,
Around the world.
Sorry. Okay, North Korea. Will the right thing will eventually happen? I don't know that you could say that. I don't know that you could say, oh,
Well, it's important to realize that number one, North Korea is not on top.
no, but they're on top within their own
country. Okay.
And
But
the
I wouldn't even say they're on top in reference to South Korea. They're on top over their citizens.
yeah, that's what I mean. But
yeah, no,
then
that can,
the regime versus its citizens, who's to say it won't be in power for forever? And who's to say that a good state of affairs won't be toppled by an oppressive regime later?
you're right. Let's get to the differences between
Between
the Confederacy and the American
uh,
colonists.
so what I do want to say, in the same vein that you started saying it's not right necessarily for just anyone who wants to secede to do so.
Correct.
So can you tell me why? Like I know why maybe intuitively,
Yeah.
but it's hard for me to explain it. Why shouldn't I be able to just secede right now and just say I want to stop paying taxes? My house is my house. I won't go out. I mean, I'd have to not get any benefit from like using the roads, but I say I want to stay in my own house and I want to secede. Why can't I do that? Why shouldn't I be allowed to do that?
Okay. Why shouldn't Benjy be allowed to simply secede from the state of Israel and say he's no longer paying taxes and he's never going to partake in any public services?
Mhm.
He's never going to benefit from the society.
I have a helicopter. I'm just gonna go straight up, and then I guess once I'm in someone else's airspace, they could shoot me down. But
I think the answer is that there's just a fundamental law of social responsibility that, in the absence of a good justification against that, you are beholden to, you are required to follow. And that means you have a responsibility to the community and society that you live in. And you don't really have a right to just say you're not a part of it because we are ultimately always a part of it.
okay, fine. Let me amend this to we live in a very urban area.
Okay.
Let's say I lived in America, in the middle of Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
in a forest,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to secede there.
Okay.
So I'm not like part of any real social fabric.
Well, maybe then you can. And frankly, the United States wouldn't care if you did. Like, okay.
What? I can't just stop paying taxes. I can't just start my own commune in the middle of America doesn't that grows its own vegetables, doesn't pay taxes, and
So the reason Mike, okay, very well. I take back that you can. I mean, you can, but yeah, I would understand the United States saying no, you can't, because also the United States wouldn't want a lot of people doing that. So the reason you can't is, well,
so maybe that's a lot of it is that a government is only by definition a government if it can govern. And if people say I don't want you to govern me, then it's not much of a government anymore. And the government should be afraid that people won't respect it and keep the rules because the government is only strong as strong as it's able to enforce law across people. The second, the government is just this fiction of in our minds. It's there are buildings, sure, but that's not what the government is. The government is the government if we all believe in it. But as soon as people stop believing in it, then it loses.
power lies where people believe it lies. Master Stark.
Exactly. Master who?
Stark. I don't know if I could.
Stark.
Yeah, Ned Stark. Lord.
I thought this was
Lord Stark.
I thought it was
Should've
Star
said.
Wars for a second.
I was
That's
trying to
just
do
unlimited power.
No, I was trying to do Varys. Power lies where people believe it lies. Lord Stark.
Except that's not even true because even if power can lie somewhere where no one's aware of it, just pulling the strings behind doesn't need to be.
But in order for that powerful person to do that, there need to be
Someone
the people
has to.
nominally in power to believe that that person is really in charge. Not
Right.
that the average people believe that person is in charge, but some people need to believe that that person is really in charge.
Yeah, but then it's like, okay, things only exist if people. Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah,
Okay.
things only exist if people agree that they exist.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
If nobody believed that I exist, I still exist.
Right. I guess so. But so if this person pulling the strings behind in the dark took your family and held them hostage to
Uh-huh.
make you do what you want,
Uh-huh.
are you saying that they're in power because they have power over you because you believe it, and if you just stop believing it, then they wouldn't have power? I guess in a sense, yes, but then they'd murder your whole family, or
Well,
parts of it. But
I mean,
that's like a very real thing.
well, it is true that their power over you in this situation does rely on your belief to some extent, which is your belief. I don't know if you'd call it a belief, but your love of your family. That is to say, you believe that your family is valuable to you, valuable in and of itself, is something to preserve. And this is not to say that you're wrong in that belief,
Right.
of course not. But it is true that the person has kidnapped your family specifically because they know what you believe about your family. And so,
But the difference you're saying between believing and something being real and like physically real is that you could turn it off or something, or like what is the difference then between believing something's real and something's actually real? Because it could be like measured more subjectively,
the difference between
more objectively.
the difference between believing something is real and that thing actually being real, that's what you're asking is
Yeah,
for?
which is probably a whole different
Episode.
episode that maybe we should maybe let's get back to.
All right.
Do we have an answer for why a whole commune shouldn't be able to
Oh.
secede from America, or
Right.
from
Well,
a governing country,
Well, here's the thing. It comes
or
down
it's
to
just bad precedent?
Well, so it comes down to when we talk about who's right in war, it's like we said, it's a bit of a bad starting place because you can have war or conflict that arises from simply competing interests, and no one is more right than the other. It's simply a fact of the world we live in that two entities can have clashing interests. And so, in the case of the person who has declared himself independent in a forest in Wisconsin and creates an independent commune, it's
Which isn't as ridiculous as
No, it's-
absurd as you. I'm sure lots of people would love to do that.
of course I was laughing at it. But no, it's not. It's not ridiculous in that it could never happen. It's ridiculous in that it's a bit funny.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah, because like how would you get food, or how would
you live off the land.
right?
I'm sure Wisconsin,
How would you get deodorant?
you wouldn't.
Natural deodorant. How would you get Netflix?
How would you get Netflix? That's what you're worried about. Okay, so it's not in the United States' interest that this happen. Well, of course, there's the tax revenue that they want from you, and two.
It's pretty minimal, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not saying this is a giant concern
Negligible, yeah.
for the United States, but yeah, especially if your commune grows to include a lot of people who are no longer paying taxes and also are not contributing to the workforce and the society, not able to be drafted into, not going to be volunteering for the army or able to be drafted in the event of a war.
Okay. So it's a slippery slope.
Right. There's a lot of
Argument,
a
yeah.
lot of obligations that a citizen has to a society, and that the society and benefits that the society provides to the citizen, and ostensibly everyone in this commune would not be a part of that relationship, and it's not in the interest of the United States that relationship break.
Okay, but then why not take over Mexico?
Well, so hold on. So I'm just explaining that sometimes it's not really a matter of who's right and wrong. Like, yes, if you truly wish to make a commune in a forest in Wisconsin and you want to be independent from the United States, I'm not saying that wish is illegitimate, but I am saying that it clashes with the interests of more powerful people. And if you cannot implement that plan with some practical possibility of success, then it's not that you're wrong. It's just that you shouldn't do it because it's not going to be successful.
So maybe we're reaching something very like deep and profound about war. Maybe we've gotten to like a serious point where
Okay.
when it comes to war, like you said, who's right and who's wrong, sometimes it's more clear than others,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it just comes down to, can you implement your strategy?
Right. Can you get what you want in
Right.
reality?
So, yeah, like sometimes I see this argument: oh, if you can't defend it, it's not really yours. If you shouldn't start a war you can't win. And in my head, I'm like, those are crazy things to say. Like why? Like it should be about, is this the right thing to do to own this this land? Are you governing it morally? or did you have a good reason to start this war or not? Like it's not to do with whether you can win or whether you can defend it, but that is a big part of it when given that, especially a lot of the times these things aren't morally they're kind of morally ambiguous.
Yeah.
I think I can't morally defend America bombing a seceding commune or
Mhm.
enforcing. I think that if they do it right, I can't see why they shouldn't be allowed to do it from a moral point of view.
Mhm.
I see why America wouldn't want it to happen and why everyone would agree, like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. At the same time, if you follow that logic, then maybe that justifies America taking over a neighboring country. But the reason why it doesn't is whether it's feasible or not. The reason it doesn't take over Mexico or Canada is based off whether it's feasible. And if it is feasible, then they'll do it or they'll attempt it. Trump sort of attempted it. Other all throughout history are countries that try to take over other countries
Right.
because they feel that they should be able to. Like, what is there a difference then between a commune wanting to secede and another country already being separate? So
Well, certainly. Yes.
why?
Well,
Just a matter
the
of
status
pride?
quo. The status quo is a strong force in the world. Things that are the status quo, you need some reason to change it. It's
Okay, but that's not a moral argument. That's just a
Is that a moral argument? Well, it's possible that when it comes to the politics of the world and the relationships between people, it is kind of a moral argument. There is kind of a moral weight to the status quo.
because if you change the status quo, people are gonna die, and the current status quo. Well,
Maybe.
assuming that status quo is a peaceful one.
Yeah. Assuming that it's peaceful and at least somewhat acceptable.
But if you have a status quo that's not peaceful, then it's more understandable if war.
Meaning if war is essentially already happening.
Right, and just to make it bigger.
I would need to understand the example more specifically.
Like you have, I don't know, if the status quo is an oppressive regime over
Mhm.
you,
Mhm.
and like you said, wanting to fight for your independence because it's still, like Thomas Jefferson said, that creating this vacuum is a bad thing, but because it's already so bad, it's fine if it gets worse.
Or at least that's worth the risk.
It's worth the risk.
It's not fine if it gets worse. I don't think Thomas Jefferson would have said it's fine if it gets worse. But
worth the risk of it getting worse.
yeah.
So in the case of a neighboring country, the status quo is assuming peace, so there's no reason you should be invading it. In the case of a commune seceding, the status quo was that you were part of the country, and now you're the one to change it. Like the seceding commune is the one to change it, and therefore they've changed the status quo for no good reason. But if they did peacefully, I still don't see why.
I think also, I don't think it can be discounted. There's a certain obligation you have to the people you already have a relationship with. You already have a relationship to the wider society. You need a reason to leave them.
You don't want to pay taxes. You find it oppressive that you have to give your money to these social welfare programs that benefit other people, and you want to create a complete capitalist society. Or you want to create a complete communist society, and you feel that your rights are, or you feel that you have to go to work every day and to afford paying for your own land, which 2,000 years ago you didn't have to pay for to live on a parcel of land. So you feel that your existence is oppressed by requiring you to have a job all the time, and you just want to do what you want.
People are capable of feeling a lot of things, but I would just repeat Thomas Jefferson's words: "Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed."
Yeah, can you explain that in
modern
lingo?
modern English? So I think there's kind of 2 points lumped into that one sentence. The first point is that prudence, i.e., pragmatism, caution, would say that you shouldn't just throw off the yoke of government willy-nilly. Governments long established, or societies that have been around a while, um, there are there's a lot that one can take for granted in a society that has been around for a while. It's true that as societies stick around for a long time, it's true that there's rot that starts to grow in parts of it, but there's also a lot of good things that a society that's been around for a while does, because it's been around long enough that they've kind of learned the ropes. And so it's easy to overlook how much benefit you get from being in a stable society. And so prudence would dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. That is to say that, yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be unhappy with life, and there's a lot of feelings that you might have, but don't just jump to the conclusion that you should be you should be seceding from the society you're a part of, because you really don't know what it's like without that structure around you, and you don't know how bad it could be. Um, so you really got to think that through. You really got to make sure that this is a worthy, worthy venture
Hmm.
to secede. And then the other point that he makes is all experience hath shown, meaning that we've seen throughout history, that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. And what that means is that basically people kind of suck. And there's a lot of that it's he's kind of, even as somebody who's saying that we are declaring independence from Great Britain, he's basically saying that history has shown, given the rotten state of mankind, rotten state of humankind, um, that it's actually more likely that we're about to make something worse than what we are currently getting rid of. That because people are just so uh, dysfunctional and terrible, it's very likely that if we venture into this unknown and try to make something for ourselves, it's very likely that we will actually do a worse job than what Great Britain did.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it,
So yeah, I hear that. It's like it's a moral argument about being careful
yeah,
and not just seceding willy nilly in modern sort of lingo.
yeah,
If you could, he would say, yeah, don't do it willy nilly. Don't just do a commune seceding because you can.
yeah,
Make sure you know what you're doing. Don't just secede your own house from this.
right,
It's like it's kind of an argument about like the holiness of government and don't like profane it. But as are many and most moral arguments are about like the holiness of something, like should be treated with caution. Human life, uh, I guess government, in a sense, he's making that argument. So that it sounds, and like I didn't know this. This is very interesting. It sounds like he saw the government of Britain as like something that has its own holiness, but that it's been corrupted or something.
hmm,
So much so that it's lost it, and the cause has to be renewed.
yeah,
I did want to say something about the Civil War, another moral uh, dilemma,
hmm,
because you were saying, because you had said, actually, it's not great all the time to secede. And
hmm,
I thought, wow, okay. I thought you were going to go in a different direction, because I was going to go in the direction of, if there is a tribe that we discover in the Amazon, and we see that they are sacrificing children. They are, you know, once a day they sacrifice their children. They have terrible practices,
hmm,
but we leave them alone, right? If we see them dying of malaria, I don't know. What is your position? Do we intervene? Do we intercede in their civilization to impose our morals on them? Start jabbing them with and like giving them cancer treatments. Uh,
Wait, so what's the case? They are dying of malaria?
um, well, the two separate cases. One, they're killing their own children to worship their sun god.
Okay.
The other case is um, they're dying of, not en masse. We go in, we see from afar, oh, this person has cancer. We should fly them out, treat it. They've never had any human contact, this tribe.
Uh-huh.
They don't know what you're doing. they think you're kidnapping them. I don't know. They
Yeah.
freak out, but do you force them?
So I would have answered differently years ago when I was more optimistic, I think. Now there's the question of what the right thing to do is, and then there's the question of what anybody would do in today's world. And if there's no benefit to having relations with this group, if there's nothing that they could give to us,
Whoa. Okay.
what?
No, that sounds more cynical of what they could give to us. I mean,
Yeah, meaning, right? If their people are dying of malaria, yeah, I mean, I would hope that good societies would open up a dialogue with them and just say like, hey, actually, we have something that can completely wipe out malaria for you. It's actually pretty low cost for us. Do you want to try it out? You know, save yourselves. Like, I hope that that is at least something that
Right.
could happen. And
But I
it
don't
is.
think
It
that's
is.
why
Yeah,
they
I don't know why I'm being so simple.
don't. I don't think it's a matter of cost. I think there's a lot of money and foundations that have, Bill Gates Foundation that like has the money to vaccinate everyone or whatever
In the world.
in countries in poorer countries.
Okay.
But I think that their policies in the way, or that the people themselves don't necessarily want it. But like, my question was not can we or will we, but should we
Should we save people from dying from malaria?
in this tribe that has had no human contact?
Meaning against their will.
And maybe not malaria, something more. Okay, maybe malaria. That's an easier thing to argue against. You're gonna go into this tribe. They're all gonna freak out.
Yeah. Like against their will, you're saying.
Yeah.
They don't even want your help.
Well, they don't know that they want it because they don't understand it.
Right. Meaning, yeah, I understand that distinction. But they will act as if they don't want it for as long as they are unaware of how much of a savior you can be. Should you overcome their resistance and save them, even if it requires violence?
Violence, non-lasting violence. Like, you shouldn't go to war.
Should
to kill
you? It's a bit of an abstract scenario. I would need. It's hypothetical.
Well, yeah, so is everything.
Yeah.
That we talk about, but fine. I'll make
No,
it hard. But what about the case of they're killing children? You go.
Okay.
You're researching this.
They're killing children.
Yeah.
They're sacrificing their children.
You take out your binoculars. They're sacrificing a child
to the blood god.
It's okay. You could say you don't know. You see both sides.
Well, I don't. It's not that I see both sides. Obviously, every human life is sacred, and that has no political delineations. So we should save the children of this tribe. The problem is
different. If you're a mass murderer, then your life has less value.
Yeah, it has no political delineations, meaning along by political boundary. If you do things that make you deserving of death and make you a danger to society if you are alive, that's different. But
I meant not that you're deserving of death, but that like if you have to choose between, like the value of your life has gone down. Not that like they should kill you, but that if they had to choose between who's going to get some vaccinations, let's say if there was a limited resource, then you would be at the lower part of or an organ donation or something, you'd be at the lower. I guess that is, so that's a life-threatening case. I'm saying I don't think that all human life is viewed the same, with the same equality across borders. Especially if you're two warring countries, then obviously you view your own people to have higher value than that other country, and that you're trying to protect them, even if it comes at the cost of innocents dying in that other country.
I did just mention in last episode that it may be legitimate under some circumstances to target civilians in war.
Well, I'm not even saying target. You did say that, and you're reminding us for this one. I'm saying collateral damage. That that going to war is going to wind up killing some of the others.
Right, I understand.
By accident. even then, because you value your own people's lives more, because that's your duty as a country.
Right. But in the absence of war,
I would even say that like kids have higher value than adults if you had to choose between saving a boat of kids and. But it doesn't matter with your.
Yeah,
I
think we're getting off the rails. I was just saying that every life is sacred, so you should feel an obligation to save the children of this tribe.
Really? Because
Yeah, is that so crazy?
No, it's not so crazy. I just didn't know that would be your answer.
Hold on, I didn't really say an answer yet. I'm still exploring. I said you should feel an obligation. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that that's what you should do.
Oh, okay.
There is something there.
Well, of course. We know that both sides have merit. That's why it's a moral dilemma.
But then I have to understand what the exact circumstances are to understand what the cost would be of saving the
cost is that these people lose their entire society when you intervene. We assume that none of them die in the process. It's just they're independent. This is their way of thinking. Now they are dependent on you. Let's say, you've come in, now you have to educate them. You throw them into, this has happened a bunch of times in history as well, like with Native Americans, or just the native population, or one population that's more educated is in charge of governing a population that's less educated. If you're going to force them to obey your laws, then you are now fully responsible for them. So it's not just a matter of saying, hey, guys, no more of this, no more killing babies or sacrificing children. You have to actually go in. There's no way around it without some sort of enforcement of usually violence or at least power, physical power. So when you go and take, you stop the chief. Now all of a sudden there's no chief in charge. You have to take away his power because he's the one who says we got to sacrifice children. All of these people don't know what to do. Now you're in charge of their children, and these people. The reason I bring all this up, is because in the Civil War you have another side that has seceded. They say we want our own authority, and we are going to do this immoral practice. Does the Union have
an
obligation or a right even to intervene in this foreign, at this point, foreign because they've seceded, to impose their morality? And it's the same reason why should the U.S. nowadays invade Iran to liberate its people? Not that that's what the current war is about. It's not that at all. It's about nuclear weapons and the threat that Iran poses to the U.S. But should it invade North Korea just to liberate its people, assuming that North Korea didn't have nuclear weapons?
So it is a mistake to think that your interference will necessarily be actually good for the people you're trying to help. It's not necessarily always the case. Even people who live in oppressive regimes.
Because of the vacuum that it leads.
Yeah, it could be that your interference causes a bunch of violence and then a war to break out that actually does more damage to the population. It could be that you oust the particular tyrannical regime that's oppressing these people, but then it produces a vacuum, and then a worse group takes over, or other.
But the point is that it'll be your fault. If you hadn't intervened and things are bad, it's at least not your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is okay.
It's better when things are just happening that are not your fault than that you interfere and they become worse and now it's your fault.
Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting thing when it comes to Bibi and Hamas. There was one point, where at the beginning of this whole, 10, 15 years ago, before Hamas posed such a threat to Israel, but they had overthrown the Palestinian Authority. So they were ruling, and Bibi wanted he thought of this policy to keep them fighting between each other, and he, from what I understand, made sure that $1 million that was designated for Hamas from Qatar got to them.
got to
Hamas because he wanted to make sure that Hamas didn't fall from power in order to maintain that they'd still be fighting. And the ridiculous thing is that he didn't need to do this. Hamas would have held on to its power anyways because they're a crazy fanatical terrorist group, and it's not like $1 million would have saved them because they could survive, and they've demonstrated that they showed that they could survive even without they don't need that much money, and they would have had funding from elsewhere. The point is just that once he intervened like that, even though it was irrelevant necessarily to what wound up happening, and probably the same thing would have happened anyways, and they still would have tried to launch rockets, start wars. But he lost credibility because he intervened. And it once you do this intervention, it's just, if it doesn't work out, you're going to look terrible.
Yeah. And something you alluded to earlier, if you're not willing to go all the way and basically kill the people who are, in power of this oppressive regime, and then absorb everybody in this regime, in this place, into your society, and be responsible for them, and teach them how to live in your culture, and do the necessary things to help them thrive in your culture. If you're not willing to go all the way to there, then it's probably better to not interfere.
But let's say even if you are willing to do that, I think a lot of the more liberally minded, especially anti-colonialist, however the movement today that defines themselves, and most of us would have like a moral issue with erasing this other tribe's identity, even if this identity, part of it was sacrificing children. It feels that there's something wrong with, even if they were like worshiping the sun god and sacrificing animals, there's something quaint and pure about it, that they live, we were all there once, and now we're all part of this great big empire of the modern West, or if it's the modern East. But we're all part of something much bigger. We don't have our own little mythologies and little tribes anymore. That's all gone. It's been erased by modernity. And it's like a crime in a way to erase this, backwards people. Like, okay, fine. Maybe when it comes to Native Americans, some of their practices were barbaric. I mean, a lot of them are peaceful. We don't see them as like, especially today, we don't see them as like a violent people at all. But I don't know. They scalped people. I mean, the European colonizers or settlers were also like terrible. So it's not much of a moral argument in the same way, but it just seems that there's like, even if they're killing children, the only alternative is just to erase their whole identity. You can't just get them to stop murdering children and that's it. There's no way to do that. You have to take out their whole tribal order.
I don't know if that's always the case. I actually wanted to amend something I just said. I said that if you're not willing to go all the way to taking these people into your society and assimilating them, then generally better not to interfere. I don't know, but I do think that needs to come from them, at least some of them. There needs to be a group
that wants the reform.
And if you can identify a group like that, then maybe you can ally with them, and
the children being sacrificed.
Maybe it's the children being sacrificed.
I don't know how competent they'd be as
exactly.
allies.
If they can show some competency and ally with you in some way, you can help facilitate change. But you can't just be you can't be the main.
I mean, you can
initiator.
It's just, you're going to have to erase. Right.
Exactly. I'm saying it's not going to work. But if the change is coming from the society itself, or at least from a subset of the society, then you might be able to work with them to help get the change that would be more morally palatable. I still haven't listed the differences between the Confederacy and the colonists.
Okay. How long is this list?
It's not long at all. It's short. All right. So the differences between the Confederacy and the American colonists. Number one, the Confederate States had representation in the American government. They, in fact, had equal representation to the northern states. At least it was equal in the Senate, and it's proportional in the House of Representatives. So in principle, it's equal. It's not as if there was some law saying slave states had less representation. Everyone in principle had equal representation. Any difference in representation was just based on population. This is a huge difference from the situation of the colonists in reference to the English Empire, because the colonists didn't have representation in the British Empire, and yet they were forced to pay taxes, which was one of their main objections. So you already can see how there's certainly not an equivalence there in injustice, if there's any injustice for the Confederacy. Number two, stop me anytime if you have questions. Number two, the Confederate States were and are adjacent geographically to the northern states as opposed to being across the ocean. Now, this is important because when you're across the ocean, you have more of a claim of, okay, we just want to be independent. Like, why are we doing this whole, like, you govern over us from across the other side of the world and we're actually your colony? Like, we're across the ocean. Like, we're separate. We already feel like we're separate. Let's just make it official. With the Confederacy, they were very much making this statement of, like, we're seceding, despite being right next to you, despite having been a part of your country just last week and having representation in your government. We are seceding. It was much more of a break with what felt natural. Number three.
Right. I mean, I get back then things were a lot, that being across the sea was a bigger deal than nowadays. We don't
Yeah.
have instantaneous communication.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel quite the same. You were worlds apart.
Yeah.
But still seems like a bit of a superficial argument. I don't see why in theory, like just because I see why in practicality you can't maintain a government back then so far away.
Okay. Number three. The Confederate States, at their peak, controlled only a third of the country and did not have uniform support even among its constituents, especially not the slaves, of course. It is likely that there were some Confederacy supporters among the northern states, but it is hard to believe, and I'm speculating here because I don't have all the research, but it's hard to believe that this was a large group. And the point is that the Confederacy failed to inspire the hearts of people and garner the necessary support to establish its independence, which points to, like what you were saying, that, hey, the Confederacy their position is we want to own slaves. What practically does that, how does the immorality of that position translate practically into their situation? Well, it practically means that you're less likely to win your conflict if your position is an immoral position, because it's not going to inspire the hearts of people you may need to support you, and you're not going to be able to garner as much support as if you had a position that was congruent with what is good.
Mm-hmm. Those are fair statements.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Benji.
Yeah.
Number four. Last one. No foreign nation ever recognized the Confederacy as an independent entity, whereas colonial America earned the support and acknowledgement of France, even while the Revolutionary War was still ongoing.
I don't know. It could be that other countries, it was just like, they didn't have time, to gain international recognition. It takes a long time to build that up, build relations.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're not going to get that much support right off the bat.
Well, you had 4 years there.
That's nothing back then, especially.
It
takes 2 years just to get a message back to France or England.
Well, I don't know about 2 years, but
a year, maybe half a year.
I'm not sure.
How long is the voyage? I will look that up as you continue.
Those are all the points I had written down. But I do think there's a point there in number 4. So even if you say, oh, well, they didn't have time, well, that also is part of the issue, because colonial America,
6 to 10 weeks.
Wow.
Depending on the weather.
Okay, that's much shorter than what we said.
Yeah, but then to get an answer back.
Another 6 to 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it takes time. Yeah. Ever played Oregon Trails?
Is that the game where it like gives you an option to it just asks you questions and you take different answers?
No, it's a game where you have to get like this family through the Oregon Trails, kind gotta eat enough food and avoid disease, and it's basically just a survival game, but like traveling through the.
But it's like you have a first. It's a real time strategy. You just
No,
take turn.
I don't really remember.
It's like a Mario-esque game where you're just moving, or like a Pokemon
Yeah,
game where you're just kind of exploring a map, picking up items.
I think so.
Because I remember there's an Oregon Trail where it was basically just a bunch of questions, and each question would lead you to a new conflict or something where it'd say, oh, you made this decision, so now this happened. But it was all text based.
Okay.
That was a different game.
Yeah,
Maybe.
the one I'm thinking of definitely had graphics. It was not just text based. Yeah. Anyway, that was just talking about the slowness of traveling.
Mhm.
And but wait, there's one final thing I wanted to say about the point with right. So you said the Confederacy they didn't have time to form relationships with other countries. Well, I grant that, but that's also part of the problem. Like colonial America had been around much longer, and when you're around much longer, you also kind of gain a legitimacy if you then want to define yourself in a certain way. Whereas the Confederacy, it was very much a part of the United States, like we said, had equal representation, etc. And its attempt, its turn towards independence was far more abrupt, far more sudden and quick than colonial America, and it didn't work out for them. And there's a certain kind of like you gotta be pragmatic about these things. Sometimes things happen in their time, and you got to wait for them. And sometimes if you try to rush things, if you try to just say like, we're independent because we say we're independent, that's not always going to work.
Mm-hmm. There is definitely a lot of that that you could see in wars that it takes time for countries to get their stuff together, and you could see how there's not an immediate reaction to certain things. If we look at Russia, Ukraine, okay, they tried to do it in one day, they failed, but rather than just turning around, they decided to get stuck in a war of attrition and grind it out, giving Ukraine more time to go and go to all the European countries, to America, garner support, talk, get them to start firing up the factories, building signing treaties, and just something that takes, diplomacy takes years and years.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, like certain war tactics can be immediate, and you have to really plan for that. And the right thing for Russia to do, if in terms of not the right thing is just to not invade, because Ukraine was never truly a threat to them, and was never going to invade them. But from a military strategy standpoint, if they lost the first time, then you go back. You don't start a war of attrition. Wait for just grind it out. I mean, maybe they didn't know it, but when you grind things out, things start turning again. Your enemy has more time to build stuff against you. Often. It's also like when it comes to Israel, it's sort of a mistake to let the war, I think, in my opinion, go on and on from a strategic point of view, because it allows more time for more sympathy to be garnered, for more countries to, despite the fact that they still have hostages but it allows more countries to start building up the pressure against Israel versus fast conflicts. What they did in Iran was much smarter. It was and that's also Trump wants as a general policy, is I'm pretty sure, is just he doesn't to minimize war, and if you have to, get it done as quick as you can. Also, that's an Israeli policy in general.
Yeah.
The longest Israeli war was like 2 or 3 months or something, maybe max.
Until this one,
which was like two
years
at least.
Yeah.
Maybe even 3 years. The last thing I want to discuss, and I think after that we can we'll start to wrap it up.
Move on to part 3.
No, hopefully we could wrap it up.
Yeah.
But the role of the individual, because a lot of this is all the collective hive mind, the government's decision. When it comes to dictators, okay, you have one person in charge making the decisions, but a lot of the time, he has advisors, fine. But a lot of the time, the wars are fought by just all of these, these ideologies, which are, it's like a colony of ants. It's a colony. It's a hive mind of people working together. It's a collective that has a different that's greater than the sum of its parts. It's this new entity emerges, and we can no longer look at um, sides of a war as being a bunch of people. It's become something in itself. A country is something in itself. A government. Um, so and then what gets lost is the people, and people play their own roles in all of these, and the roles usually played by people, one is conscription. Whether is conscription a good thing? Is it the right thing to do? Should you be allowed to force people into joining the government's war effort? Is it their moral duty to defend their government, or is conscientious objection um, also a thing? Should you be allowed to go against your government's narrative? Is that treason? What does treason look like? Oftentimes, in the case with Edward Snowden, this was a famous CIA operative who released this confidential information about how America was spying on everyone, basically, and its own people. Releasing this undermined America's power, thereby going against his government. And a lot of people made the argument that this is treason, the punishment for which is death or imprisonment. Over time, he was hailed as a hero because the narrative shifted. Uh, because the government, people realized, the government shouldn't have this much power over its citizens. This is a dangerous precedent, even though they're probably doing it anyways. He had fled because of the laws, but what is an individual's role when it comes to agreeing with the government's policy and the collective? Should we allow people to go against it because ultimately it's good, maybe, to protest against this? The war is a force. It's pushing along a whole country. Not one person can usually stop this. It takes a whole nother force in a different direction of another government or collection of people to push back against it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the term that in the Middle East that's usually used is like coming down from the ladder. A lot of the times, a government will get itself in a position where it can't come down from the ladder. That's what they say about like the Iranian government. They want to enrich uranium to 60%. That once they've made that decision, it's just they feel that they would lose all of their legitimacy if they reverse that decision. It's a matter of pride. It's a matter of we can't just stop the war, even if it's good for us, beneficial. We have to keep going. We have to go until we win because there's a fear in losing legitimacy. Even if it's like a peaceful loss, there's a fear that that they can't lose. We shouldn't lose. So whether we should allow citizens to protest or how much should they be allowed? Should we encourage protest even against war? And how much? The last question is how much attention should we pay to war? Should we uh, should we talk about this a lot? Should we? Is too much of it unhealthy? Is too much just propaganda and just an unhealthy obsession that becomes an anxiety? A lot of the times we're living, right now we're living through a lot of historical events. I myself keep up with a lot of it. I'm always refreshing the news, which I don't do when there's not a war going on. And I get lost in it. I get worried about it. On the one hand, I justify it by saying, well, this could actually affect me if I'm walking somewhere. I should know where are the dangerous areas now. What has just happened? Are we going to need to run to a bomb shelter? On the other hand, it's an unhealthy obsession. It doesn't truly affect me a lot of the times. Politics don't really affect me on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll affect me based off of like how much taxes I pay and how much, certain laws that are being passed, but usually it doesn't. So, what do you think the role is of a person in a country at war, an individual in a country at war?
First, I want to answer an adjacent question. I think that a government should always keep the channel to its constituents open. That is to say, a government should always be keeping an ear open to what its people are saying. And so even in a time of war, there should not be restrictions on freedom of speech, and you should allow wartime protests.
But loose lips shinks, loose lips, sink ships. I think I was having a bit of a moment there.
We'll talk about loose lips.
Yeah.
I think you can apply.
Because there's a lot of military censorship at time of war because there's vital information. You're saying just protests.
Information.
In general.
Yeah, no.
But you're saying keep the channels open for transparency. In order to protest, the people have to know what's going on, what actions their government is taking.
Oh, well, that's slightly different than what I was thinking. Then you can always have a conversation about any information that a government keeps from the public on the grounds of national security or I don't know what else. But yeah, any information that the government has decided actually would be too dangerous to release to the public. Is that ever okay? I think it is. I think it is necessary. At the end of the day, you can't. Whenever you have a society of individuals, of human beings, there are going to need to be some decisions made that are necessary for the sake of the society that don't consider the individual wishes of some people who might disagree, and that might hurt the feelings or hurt more than feelings of some people who disagree, and that's an inevitable reality.
Well, it's more than just feelings. I mean, the people have a lot at stake when their country's at war. They could lose their livelihoods. They could lose family members as soldiers.
Okay, so you can
lose lives. Yeah,
that's fair. But does that mean that you must know all information about the war, and the government must be fully transparent with you with all of its information?
I mean, I agree. I see both sides. That on one hand, you can't just share all information because then your war strategies won't be successful because your enemies will know it. But on the other hand, if your country is not doing well in a war, it's losing a needless war, and yet you still send out a lot of propaganda that tries to convince the people that they are winning the war.
Yeah.
Then this is morally unfair to your people, and they should know why their loved ones are dying.
Yeah.
And how successful it is.
So I think in a free society that keeps freedom of speech, even in a time of war, keeps freedom of the flow of information, the government will try to spread propaganda because, of course, it must in order to support its war effort. But in a free society, if the people truly if the people have truly become disenfranchised from this war effort, the propaganda will not really be successful. And yeah, I do think that all of a government's actions should ultimately be beholden to the will of the people, including being at war. And if it gets to a point where the people no longer believe in this war, then the government should ask itself whether it's doing the right thing by continuing. Should find a diplomatic solution quickly. Sometimes when you're deep in the war, it's close to impossible to just get out of it. But still, the process can be started to get out of it. Of course, war fatigue is a real thing. There was a lot of war fatigue with the Iraq War and Afghanistan War in America. The Vietnam War. War is certainly
people like short wars.
Yeah. Yes. People.
Where not so many people die.
Correct. Yes.
On your side, or on either side.
Yeah. Yeah. I think ultimately people are aware that there are innocent bystanders of war on either side.
Mm-hmm. But should the government have a vote let the people vote, do a referendum of whether to continue the war or not?
Probably not. I don't really believe in that. That's like direct democracy, which I don't really believe in. Because
I mean, not saying that we should vote on every little issue, but big ones like war.
I don't know. You don't let the people directly vote on a specific policy, because only the people who have all the information and are having the necessary conversations and the necessary looking at the necessary stuff, only they can really make the decision. That's why we have a representative democracy. So we elect people who we hope are making the best decisions given all the information that they have. To have a direct vote among the people about an important policy decision strikes me as pretty idiotic for a society to try to do.
Well,
You're
you
very
could
likely.
argue that like there's wisdom in the masses that like okay, if you have ultimately if you're worried about a few people, they're not gonna who don't know what they're talking about, or even a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about, they're not gonna have such an effect.
Mhm.
It's about the masses, and like still, they should have. If it's such a serious issue, um, then maybe they should have the ability to control their destiny when they're dying for it. It's a big issue. But I hear what you're saying, that they don't necessarily have all the relevant information. Neither do your representatives necessarily. Maybe they have more uh, information about the capabilities of the enemy, of the capabilities of the country itself.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Also,
but I think they just don't do it because of feasibility and because the government doesn't want to risk being told that they can't, that they have to stop the war and then lose legitimacy. The
possibly.
people in charge are going to say, no, we can't just give up now. They're going to,
Mm.
they're going to take down, this is going to take down the entire government or the current cycle of government.
Um, possibly. But the other thing is that when it comes to a specific important decision, it's important that there's somebody who takes the blame for it if it goes wrong. That's how you get a good decision from somebody when there's what to lose. When you have a referendum among all of the populace, who's really taking the blame if it goes wrong? I mean, it's kind of like exporting the responsibility of making a tough decision to the people, which ironically maybe is what democracy is about, but not really. It's I don't really believe in democracy as much as I believe in republics.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we covered a lot.
Yes. Wait, I never brought up the Lord of the Rings.
Yes. So we will end with a book about war,
Yeah,
fictional war,
a fictional war.
but a truly, grounded in, the nature of man and elf and dwarf, but just any intelligent, conscious being in the universe probably subject to war. It's just
Mhm.
natural.
Yeah.
And competition always arises because evolution requires competition for the best to survive. We wouldn't be here on this earth. Humans would not exist if we weren't always competing with each other to be better. Animals, the current iteration, would not exist. We Homo sapiens, yeah, unfortunately, we like wiped out all the other types of our species. I think there were different branches of sapiens,
Okay.
or there's Homo erectus and Neanderthals, different branches. We're the
Okay.
only ones that survived. We don't know if we killed them or we killed some of them and married the others because there's some in our DNA of Neanderthal and others. But ultimately, in a way, who we are today it's in our genes to fight. All animals, not all animals. Some animals are, you know, uh, leeches or whatever. They parasites.
Hmm.
I don't know if you could call that competition with it. It's more something seen in like towards the higher end of the food chain. I think real competition. I don't know. There's always competition, but like trying to fight each other to kill each other for territory, something more of a predator uh, ability.
Hmm.
But it's just really who we are, how we got here, and it's probably going nowhere soon. Kind of stuck with it. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that has anything to do with your quotation from Lord of the Rings,
Not
but
really. That sounded like a closing statement, but okay, fine. Lord of the Rings. So I read somewhere before I even read Lord of the Rings. I read in a book that was analyzing themes in various famous books, and it said that the theme of the Lord of the Rings is that good will always triumph because evil defeats itself.
mm.
And
I like the dichotomy or whatever the foil between my conclusion and yours. So it's good. I'm just guessing where yours is going. Sorry.
okay, I don't yet know what you're guessing, nor how it
Well, I was
connects.
saying war isn't going anywhere. We're all going to kill each other. But maybe you're saying good will prevail and
Well,
peace and.
no, I'm not saying war is going to be gone, but I am getting to a point that that it is more likely that the winning side is right, because you have to be right in order to win. Sometimes. I accept that this doesn't always fit, although ultimately I think it does fit. That even when you are wrong, you might win for a time, but eventually you'll lose. And
Or else we'll all be dead.
but we will do everything in our power to prevent us all from being dead, so it's likely that you will lose.
Unless we die.
But we will do everything in our power.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
Okay. There's always going to be people trying to.
Exactly. So when you consider Sauron from
Okay.
from Lord of the Rings, right? He is very powerful. He even has this ring that makes him even more powerful. He has this army of orcs. He has also persuaded Saruman to join him. But nevertheless, his mission, what's his ambition? To subjugate all of Middle-earth to his dominion.
Not a
And-
very lofty goal.
Not a very lofty goal, and something that the rest of Middle-earth doesn't want, because it's evil. Why is it evil? It lowers the status of other living beings, and other living beings naturally resist that. So all of Middle-earth, right? You have the elves and the dwarves who aren't even friends. They're like cold allies in Lord of the Rings story. You have Rohan, Gondor, all these different nations that wouldn't necessarily have banded together in the absence of this common evil, but with this common evil, they band together. And so it goes to show that right, why does Sauron lose? It's because he's so evil. Because all the other people of Middle Earth band together and fight against him. And there's deeper things going on as well when you consider the power of the ring, right? So on the one hand, you got Sauron, who C.S. Lewis, by the way, C.S. Lewis, I forget where he writes this, but he writes that
He wrote Chronicles of Narnia.
yes, C.S. Lewis wrote the
And
Chronicles
they lived at the same time and were pen pals.
as J.R.R. Tolkien. Yes, they were friends, C.S. Lewis and
Mhm.
Tolkien. C.S. Lewis writes that good people, to be good is to understand good and to understand evil, because you cannot be truly good without having understood its opposite, and you chose good. Whereas evil people understand neither. They don't understand what evil really is, and they don't understand what good really is. And you see that kind of with Sauron, in that he can't imagine that anybody could possibly want to destroy the ring. Sauron thinks he created this ring that has this powerful pull over people. It grants a crazy amount of power. Only he can truly harness that power to its full potential, but other beings can get power from it as well. And in Sauron's mind, he can't even fathom a possibility that someone would seek to destroy this. Everyone will try to take it for himself. And his whole strategy is built on that. And the reason why Frodo and Sam are able to infiltrate Mordor and basically sneak right under Sauron's nose and get to Mount Doom is because Sauron's focus the entire time was not on somebody infiltrating Mordor and trying to destroy the ring. His focus was on Aragorn or Gandalf using the ring against him.
I will, just to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Please.
Yeah? Okay, it's okay.
Please,
'Cause
yeah.
I don't want to ruin the.
Yeah.
I think he's often portrayed, Sauron is portrayed as like a one-dimensional character who just wanted to rule all Middle Earth.
Okay.
But what if?
Okay.
What if? I'm just going to say this.
Alternative reading.
Alternative reading. What if, the orcs were oppressed people and they were hunted
Yes.
and he was providing them a homeland
Yes.
and respect and equality, and he was using this ring to achieve that because everyone was just against the orcs. They all just like killed them.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't fathom the idea that someone else wouldn't use this ring for the same good that he was using it for. Not obviously that's he made it pretty clear that the orcs were trying to burn down villages and just kill everyone.
One final example of evil defeating itself in The Lord of the Rings is the power of the ring was so powerful that nobody could overcome it to the point that they could bring it all the way to Mount Doom and destroy it. We see with Frodo, who was uniquely able to resist the ring. He gets all the way to the ledge.
But it was mostly all hobbits.
Yeah.
Because probably because of their outlook on life, which was no desire whatsoever to rule over anyone else,
Uh-huh.
just to live their own fun lives
Yeah.
in peace.
Very, very possibly. So you're right. So you had Frodo, who's a hobbit, they already have more likely to be able to resist the ring, and then also Frodo
Because
has
Bilbo also did, yeah.
Bilbo was able to resist
And
it.
Sam, he held the
Yes.
ring for momentary
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. So Frodo and Frodo has this mission to destroy the ring, and even with his whole right, he's come all this way only for the purpose of destroying the ring, and he can't do it at the very end. The ring is so powerful that it prevents itself from being destroyed by somebody who had full intention of trying to destroy it. However, it is that very power that the ring holds over people that actually ends up destroying it, because Gollum was so consumed by the ring's power that he ends up trying to get the ring from Frodo while Frodo is on the ledge. So in this poetic way, the power of the ring was so powerful that it could not be destroyed willfully, and yet it destroys itself through Gollum being consumed by it.
So that's a very interesting reading, because until now I did not read it that way.
Okay.
I read it as no one is truly free of corruption. Some are just, more. They're less likely to, more immune to it.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, when it comes down to it, our souls are always like, it can't truly let it go 100%. So even at the end, Frodo couldn't do it, and he needed the help of happenstance or other people. So I mean, I like it, your version is a lot better, better interpretation, because that gives more meaning to it. In my head, it was always just like, well, I guess it was kind of, could have gone one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
It was very close to not getting destroyed, and then the whole thing would have been for naught.
Mm.
It was just happened to be. I didn't see this as a destiny thing as much, which I should have, because it's fantasy, and there is, this idea that there is a destiny to all of this, and what happens is supposed to sort of happen at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I read it as like, if we're ever gonna, just to take it back to this analogy, if we're ever gonna stop war, if we're ever gonna live in peace, we need to work together. It's only with the help of Sam that he could do it. It's only with the help of Gollum or his enemy or whatever. Also, like the fact that Frodo wasn't willing to kill himself as well. Like he changed his mind all of a sudden when Gollum started fighting him. Right? He started fighting Gollum for the ring. Not just, it wasn't for the power necessarily, but maybe because he had a change of heart or something. Like
once
he
Gollum tried to take the ring from him, Frodo fought back in order to destroy it ultimately.
I think that's how I had read it, and like this idea of like an evil inclination that we all have, that's that we all feel sometimes, and we're always trying to overpower it, and sometimes we get caught because we have like a dual consciousness or multiple consciousness and goals in life, and sometimes we're contradicting each other and stuff. But yeah, I like your reading that ultimately evil is like unsustainable, trying and if we don't know what the right thing is, or the right side of the war is, maybe there is some some solace in knowing that whatever happens,
maybe
one day will be for the best, hopefully.
Nice.
All right. This has been the longest podcast so far.
How long was that?
And this is the Benjy and Cal podcast.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.